Hey, team players, and welcome back. Today's going to be a great day. All about what's win this week. Let's go get some more W's on the thing and make some champions. So, Bob, any thoughts before we kick off today?
Well, Deontay Johnson got traded
I saw that.
for the Baltimore Ravens. I don't really like that. That changes things just a hair. Stephon
I'm not
Diggs
sure it's
is
a good
out.
fit for Baltimore.
Stephon Diggs is out for the season, so that's a little bit disappointing. Jordan Love is day to day with that groin strain injury, so that plays a role into how we value Reed and Love going forward. And also, funny video I found on TikTok. It's really weird to see Dan Campbell look really, really happy, but in an interview that he had with with the media, Dan Campbell was giddy about potentially getting someone on the roster. There's speculation, lots of speculation.
Garrett Wilson.
But from the speculation and the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, many people are speculating that there is a potential, and I'm excited about it, potential Max Crosby to Detroit deal, potentially.
See, I think Garrett Wilson's also a candidate for either one. But hey, guys,
Max Crosby if Max Crosby goes to the Detroit Lions, say goodnight to the rest of the league.
I'd love that. I've been wanting Detroit. Love Detroit.
Disgusting.
All right, guys. So first off, we got guys who are filing up on our comments hours before we started. Marlon being one of them, and we're gonna start our show off because that's how we go in the order they come beforehand. So, long story short, condensing his question to a couple of comments here, he got offered Mike Williams and Reed for his Puka. You pulling that trigger, Bob?
Well, if you read the rest of these comments here for Marlon, that this is essentially part of a multi-trade deal he's trying to get done. And with the end goal in mind that Puka moves off the team, Evans stays on the team, and Reed, White, Keon Coleman, or D-Hop is moved for one of those two running backs. Insofar as that's true, this is what potentially the new squad will look like. So take that in real quick. Versus
does need the back.
This squad.
That would upgrade his running back pretty substantially.
And I have a lot of opinions about this.
There's a lot of risk there, though.
So
if he doesn't get part two, I don't like the middle part of the equation. The part that doesn't have Puka.
So two things about this, Marlon, is that, and this is something because the coverage grades are not out yet for Puka this year because of the injury, but based upon how he performed last year and last year only, there is reason to believe that Puka is one of those wide receivers that supersedes most matchups. Okay. So we saw in his first game back what he was capable of doing against this zone blitzing coverage of the Vikings. And for me, I get what you're trying to pull off here. And I do understand, and I do think that your end goal is a smart end goal to be at, Marlon. But as it goes,
I like it.
As it goes, there's a lot of room for, and I do think, based upon some of the matchups and the health of Jordan Love in question, that I can no longer say with confidence what I said a couple weeks ago about Jaden Reed. So I do think out of the two wide receivers you're getting back, I do think it's smart to keep Mike Evans, as his future looks a little bit brighter with the injury to Godwin and the younger cooking wide receivers down there. But I also believe that Keon Coleman is a piece worth keeping, and D-Hop is a piece worth keeping. Now, I don't really see, I see how this elevates your team. I honestly do see how it elevates your team. However, I'm not sure that Puka's the piece that I really want to move.
Okay.
Personally speaking, that I feel like keeping Puka and trying to figure out a trade for HN and Cook without giving up Puka is probably the pathway that I would take more than selling Puka. And I think, realistically speaking, right now, because of basically people are scared with Jayden Reed right now, and rightfully so with the injury to Jordan Love. It's a confusing time, right, Joe? So I feel like on your roster right now,
It is.
Devonta Smith in a trade has more value than Reed in a trade. And I feel like you could get that trade done more likely than to give away Puka. And if you wanted to go out there and get Mike Evans, Marlon, I think you have the draft capital to just go out there and get Mike Evans without moving Puka. That's my personal
Yeah,
opinion.
I think that's the long story short. Bob, you just gave a great answer because I like the end result, as you said there. I just don't like the pathway of doing it. And that's 100% the right answer, Marlon. You're putting yourself too risked in the middle because the fundamental fact is the team looks good when you're done with the marathon, but it doesn't look good in the middle of it. So that's what Bob just gave you a great way to get around that problem and get you into a good spot. So love where your head's at,
I'm all
and
for it.
that's where we're going to get there. And then do we
right.
hit on his other question before we dive into dance?
No. So when it comes to this, Marlon, should I trade Drake London and a bench wide receiver like Keon Coleman for Tyreek? Similar. It's a similar kind of play call here, right? I think it is still a time to buy low on Tyreek. He's a guy that supersedes most matchups. Getting used to having Tua back is good. Drake London, we've saw what the Tampa Bay coverage could do. I mean, Drake London blew them out of the water on the Thursday night game, followed that game up with basically a non-entity type of a game because they just were putting everything on Drake London to force him to stop. I mean, if teams want to do that, by all means, they can do that. And without them elevating Bijan to more of an integrated role into the game, I do think that Drake London and Keon Coleman is a nice start for a conversation for Tyreek because Drake London is at least in the same stratosphere area of Tyreek in terms of volume. And Keon Coleman is one of those boom players that could take a team to another level if they do, in fact, start him on a week-to-week basis. If it were me sitting here today as I am, if I were to do this, then you can also still navigate that other trade without all of those trade pieces and end up with Tyreek. If I could end up out of all those trades that you're making, if with Tyreek, Puka, and Achane or Cook or something like that, I think your team is in a better spot for it, realistically speaking.
I agree with that. So logistical show note for you guys. We're gonna treat Dan's opening one as a deep dive, and we're gonna just bury through some quick hitters here. And remember, guys, tell us if you want your question to be a deep dive by putting DD in front of it. If not, put the QH for the quick hitter. The order of the deep dives are going to be as said. Dan's that he gave us, Ashid, and then Jesse. But we're going to jump in right now to the quick hitters. That being said, Jackson's the first quick hitter of the day, Bob, and we got to kind of hit these rapid fire so we catch up and don't bury Dan too much.
All right.
Love is not worth the bench spot, right? So who should he grab out of them over Love?
Okay. So I wouldn't do.
We had this similar question yesterday, right, Bob?
Right. But from the news that we hear today, I wouldn't make this move until probably Friday, realistically. Friday or Saturday, once we get a good look, because the matchup for Love against Detroit, if Love is healthy, is actually a decent enough matchup. If in fact he is not healthy, and if in fact he is going to miss time, which they speculated he might miss time after that game, the way I would order this would be I would want to go after and grab Stafford or Herbert. Those would be the two guys that would be on my radar, Jackson. Stafford and Herbert, with Stafford having a top priority. You're in the similar situation as I am. I'm starting Love, and the guy I'm targeting is Stafford, to be honest with you, right now.
Very similar. Very similar.
George.
Jesse, maybe it's too early for this question, here, but I want to know. Oh.
Jesse, it's good to see you again. And just like I said yesterday to Joe, with people that own Josh Downs, this is a blessing. This is a blessing for those that hold Michael Pittman. So Mr. Wumbo, if Mr. Wumbo's in the chat and you're still holding on to Michael Pittman, you got your dream scenario. Anybody that's still currently holding on to Colts wide receivers and Colts weapons outside of Alec Pierce, everybody's probably dropping a drink down for AR right now. George.
Well, Wumbo's a dealer and a trader. Who knows what's on his roster? I needed to come back because it's going to be different than it was yesterday. Hey, he's a mover and a shaker, man.
Need to start two of these wide receivers and a flex this week. I don't think you can bench Tank. Without Diggs there, I don't think you can bench Tank this week. So while he wasn't one of my starts last week, he does become a start for me this week. And I think Joe is on the same wavelength in terms of that, at the very least.
That's right.
DJ Moore is a bench for me this week. Only because we cannot determine the volume that the wide receivers are going to get. While it could be nice and electric, it's just not as predictable as we want it to be. BTJ, again, BTJ is day to day when we thought yesterday that he could be out 2 to 4 weeks. So, he becomes somebody that is potentially back on the radar again. And I think realistically speaking, what this comes down to, and I'm looking up a couple things right now, Joe, and I know this is a quick hitter for all intents and purposes here.
Yeah. But so George,
go ahead.
I was going to say, George, to your point, this is definitely still too early for the starter stops. But that being said, you have a lot of good things here building up. Tank's a must start with the injuries that are around him. And he's also not at the peak of his powers, so he's not tradable. I feel like I'd say every single week you should have traded DJ Moore already. He's a declining asset without any really upside. Chicago's schedule's about to get a shitload harder, and he's about to get a whole lot worse. As a unit, Chicago's going to do that. Cooper, I really think, has a limit on him about usefulness, and if it doesn't happen now, I don't know if it's gonna, and I'm not sure I want to play in that boat. Because this is another thought I've been having about Cooper. This is an aside. This is outside the quick hit. If you're in a culture of abysmal failure, and you've kind of just accepted that's your life, and then in literally a moments in time, you found out, whoa, now I'm not in this completely failure environment. It's hard to catch up and reset yourself to be back to your A game and be championship level. Yeah. And I think Cooper's dealing with that a little bit. So the long story short is if you put gun to my head, start a roster right now, the two receivers are going to be Tank and Waddle. The flex is going to be Bucky. But I do love the direction of what McMillan's in and JSN. If Metcalf plays, I'm probably going to pick JSN too.
Well,
that's the challenge you have with this.
Yeah,
because I think JSN's a much better Robin than he is a Batman.
I'm not on JSN this week. I am most likely rolling out a combination of Bucky, Tank, and between Amari and Waddle. That's
to me that is close.
That's kind of where I'm at. I did like what I saw from Hopkins this week too. That's just something to note. But my initial lean today on Tuesday, George, would be Bucky in the flex, and then Tank for sure, and then something between Amari and Waddle. Because we just don't have enough on McMillan and Hopkins yet on their respective, to kind of roll them out with confidence. We can investigate a little bit more tomorrow. Alejandro, working on a Reed and Pittman
Alejandro, I
trade.
love how you're constantly working
St.
as
Brown.
well. This is a great trade. The fact that we got a new quarterback is going to give you a better upside and potential of doing it. I love this action.
Yeah, and Alejandro, the only real thing to worry about for anything, if you're going after a Detroit wide receiver or tight end or piece like that, is just volume. Because it's proven that they don't have to pass the ball more than 25 times a game to win a game. So, you're taking in a limited amount of volume in comparison to what Amon-Ra is used to. Pittman may be in for better days ahead with Flacco. We'll see, but this is the right direction to move, Alejandro. And anybody that's joining us right now, if you have a question, leave it in the chat. If you have a question that you want a quick answer to, put QH before your question, and we'll get to it in our stream of quick hits. And then if you want a deep dive, please put DD. We answer every question. So if you don't hear your answer while you are here, tune back in, watch the replay, and you'll be able to hear the answer to your question. We do go in and answer every question. Bryce, I traded Hill for Njoku, Devonta Smith, and Tank Dell. Bryce, for those people that are looking to see what will get Hill on your team, a tight end with value will as a piece. That's why I mentioned George Kittle or Evan Ingram yesterday. Will be a necessary, almost a necessary piece in the deal, because a lot of people are struggling with figuring out what tight end to have, or they have tight ends to spare. And Devonta Smith, again, Devonta Smith is one of those players that's not the hammer for Philadelphia, but definitely a valuable piece and hasn't hit their ceiling yet. Tank Dell, even when Nico comes back with Stephon Diggs being out for the season, is going to have a bigger role on this offense. And CJ Stroud will pass the ball more. But again, the loom of the 30-run Joe Mixon games is still always available for them. I think you made a good deal for that. I really do. I like that you went out there and got 3 valuable pieces for your team. And I'm sure you trimmed the fat and got rid of some junk that you didn't want on the back end. Gabriel, Garrett Wilson or Monty rest of season, and D-Hop or Pittman on the waiver wire. Well, it's Monty for us rest of the season. There will be some tough matchups.
Yeah, for sure.
There will be some tough matchups for Monty, but they're moving the ball. Garrett Wilson will have matchups where he's better than Adams in, but it feels like for the most part, the Aaron Rodgers-led Jets are a sinking-ish ship, and the wide receivers are directly related to that. So we're on Monty here for lots of good reasons, and the stats back it up. And in regards to the waiver wire selection, D-Hop, Juju will come back, so D-Hop's role will have to be well-defined. Patrick Mahomes does throw the ball a decent amount per game, but again, with Hunt there, and they could just use Hunt until Hunt falls apart, that is something to concern yourself with. If you would ask me this yesterday, my lean would have been D-Hop.
Really
if you ask me today, my lean is a little bit towards Pittman with Joe Flacco. I think that the situation is better for D-Hop, but I think that
it's not a little bit, it's a lot of it.
Volume. What? What'd you say, Joe?
Is Pittman worth a pickup now? Like, that's my question.
He is.
He
is. I mean,
knowing that. Well, I guess 2 parts question here. How far is Richardson benched for? Is he?
Dude, they didn't say how much he's benched for, Joe. They didn't say how much he's benched for, but they did bench him. I mean, whether it's a punishment or not, Joe Flacco's starting this week. So at least this week, at the very least, at the very minimum this week, it's worth considering that Pittman is a good look at the very least for this week. I mean, the stats back this up. Pittman plays well against the coverages that he's going to face this week, and he might only get 3-4 targets or 3-4 catches in this game, but he's most likely going to get a touchdown with JT back and then being able to move the ball. So I really feel like this is the pathway and this is the time if he's on your waiver wire to pick him up. I hate to say that, but
Yeah,
it's true.
No, you're right though. This is just another side thought I had. Think about what Pittman's career has been, or fucking Flacco's career has been. He basically was unwanted and gets kicked out, and now his last 2 years, after being retired for at least half a season, he has now removed 2 future quarterbacks of the franchise. He has just said, "Oh, this guy sucks. No one wants him anymore." So they didn't re-sign him in Cleveland because everyone knew he was better than Watson, and now he has shown he's infinitely better than Richardson, although I'm pretty sure you could have shown that too, Bob. So with that being said, that's a remarkable career Flacco has had, and it really needs some love. I just absolutely love it.
The funny thing about AR is that AR, in terms of completion percentage, in the last since the year 2000, is only surpassed in its ineptitude by the likes of 3 other quarterbacks, one of them being Achilles Smith. So, like,
is it Bryce Young and Watson as the other 2?
No. It's some guys from some years past. I heard it from some people, and I was like, that's wild. Like that AR, but it's not surprising. I mean, we knew this going into the season. He was a guy that wasn't a void for us. But it's really disheartening to see such a young guy have such a.
We knew this coming out of Florida. So, Bob, why don't you batch up Tyler's quick hit, and then we'll do Dan's deep dive.
We got to get. The next quick hit is actually here from Bryce. We'll do Dan's deep dive, and then we'll get to the rest of the quick hits here. Bryce, Rachaad White for Najee. I think it's a fair enough deal. Rachaad White is going to be confusing to own over the next.
Yeah, I want weeks. Najee. He's easier.
Najee is one of those guys that we did say with Warren coming back, the schedule looking better, particularly after the bye week. Najee does have a decent enough tricky playoff schedule, but he is a usable asset. You know what you're getting out of him. You're either getting 50 yards or you're getting 100 yards. And there's really, it's either 5 points, 10 or 10 plus points. For Rachaad White, the floor is a movable floor, and it's just he's a really frustrating own, and somebody will want to take that on.
Hey guys, there's nothing wrong with taking the easy option. Just remember.
And we're going to get to the quick hits as they come, guys. So we've got you on that, but we do want to hit Dan's deep dive, as this is one of the questions submitted before we went on air.
So his first one is Jordan Mason droppable now? Bob, how long is he out for?
Let me look.
Well, all your fabs should be on Grenada, by the way.
Well, remember, Grenada was one of those guys that I reminded people to go pick up
last week. Yeah,
it says he may have been able to return. Fantasy Pros reports that he may have been able to return. So it's uncertain right now, especially without any injury reports. I feel that when it comes to Mason, a guy like Mason, I know George, we were talking to George Plays a while ago about Mason, and for us, he was a hold for a long time because he was putting up good enough stats. But there was that crux point where it's like, maybe he is tradable, maybe he isn't. He was of high value before, but he's been dropping in value almost every single week, it's felt like. So is he droppable? I don't think so. I think I'd still hold him for sure, unless I had another player that I wanted to go out and get that you thought would be better than him in the long run. That's just my opinion.
I still like what he was doing. He was producing tremendously. If he's in the starting lineup, you want to play him. So you definitely don't want to cut someone like that. He's a hold for Mason. Part 2 here. Is Cedric Tillman a sell high player, or should he be held on to? Knowing that he's basically the number 2, because I don't think he's more talented than Judy. Say what you will about Judy, he's still their number 1 right now.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with that. Realistically, whether he's
what it has something to do with it, it means he's not going to get the top coverage.
Right, but it's also it's not the fact that he's a 1 or 2. It's the fact that Jameis Winston, similar to guys like Aaron Rodgers, puts favor onto certain positions on the field and certain players. And Jameis Winston, this role for Jameis Winston, historically speaking, has been a primary beneficiary of all of the targets that Jameis Winston will throw. And Jameis Winston is not a quarterback that's afraid to throw interceptions. I mean,
no, he's not.
I mean, Jameis Winston,
part of
30
Winston's
for 30
history, if you
should
remember,
definitely been an ESPN show. Now, as I look at things, Jameis Winston threw the ball 41 times against a Baltimore defense that was definitely a defense that you could throw on. There's no doubt about that this matchup was perfect for Tillman and it was perfect for Jameis Winston. When we look at what's coming up ahead, and I'm pulling up the Browns schedule right now just to kind of framework it for you, is that, the Browns are, I hate when the computer's slow. The Browns are coming in and they're going to be facing, they've got a decently tough schedule up ahead, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they do. Their schedule does get rough
so
at
they've
the
got
end there.
Chargers, Saints, Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, Chiefs, and that's before we get to, and that's like right before we get to the playoffs. Chiefs
so there is something to say that you got the bump from the quarterback change, but Cleveland's still certainly in trouble and going to be losing more. You also can look at it from the perspective of Cleveland's going to be in plenty of garbage time looking at that schedule moving forward. So Tillman, default starting point is don't invest in Browns. That part hasn't changed. But do I think you're going to have a higher moment in terms of his return than today? While I don't see him being a 20-plus player week in, week out, I do see him as being able to give you 15. So it's all going to depend upon who your league mates are, Dan. If you have someone who's just desperate and loves chasing points, then he's your sell high guy. But if you have people who want to see it a little bit first, then you wait. Because I do think he'll be able to produce it moving forward. I don't think he's going to be a complete one-shot wonder, although he's certainly closer to that side than a guaranteed he's the next Lamar.
Here's something to kind of put in your back pocket, right? I'm not saying Tillman's like Chris Olave at all, right? But these stats come from statnews.com. And these are the last Chris Olave with Jameis Winston. So Chris Olave plays the same position that Tillman plays, okay?
Yeah, the X. So did Mike Evans.
Yeah. So this is back in 2022, 2023. And throughout that time, Chris Olave had 46 catches for 685 yards and 4 touchdowns in 10 games with Jameis Winston. Pulling that, Joe, you said Mike Evans here, right?
Yeah, that's what all of his history is. I will chuck it deep because you're on the side of the field I like it. You're going to end up in that back right corner, and I'm going to put it at you. Long story short, you catch it or you don't. Someone else catches it, they catch it, whatever. I'm putting it out there. That is how Jameis Winston is. That's how he operates, and I love it about him. Remember the first thing he was ever said about him on national TV? He was a freshman walking in to the National Labor Day game, and they said, are you going to let this freshman try to just not crash your sports car you had? And what the answer was no, I want him to race it as hard as he possibly can. And that has always been how Jameis Winston plays quarterback. So, yeah, you're going to get deep opportunities with Tillman.
And according to Stat News as well, and I'm not saying that Cedric Tillman is like Mike Evans at all.
No, he ain't.
But in his career, in 68 games, 356 catches, 5,605 yards, and 34 touchdowns. So there are worse – in terms of waiver wire additions, there are worse players to have on your roster. I understand the schedule is tough. I understand the ability to want to trade him. I think it's fine to trade him.
What do you think you should get for him?
I don't think you're going to get that much for him. I think if I'm trading Tillman, that I'm going to probably be looking at the guy who owns Ladd McConkey. If I'm trading Tillman, I'm going to be looking at the guy that owns Keon Coleman. If I'm trading Tillman today, I want a player that's going to satisfy a need for.
So you want a receiver 3 for him?
I want a boom. I want a boom or a volume play that's going to give me a little bit more reassurance. while I think Tillman is worth a flex start, in most weeks, probably not this week, but when you look at it, there's value. And people know you just picked him up off the waiver wire. So there's not going to be like that much value in him, even despite his 25-point game. So he's definitely a hold candidate, knowing that. Unless you have some people fresh from the farm, they're not going to go out there and get him right now unless they lost Stephon Diggs this week. So if I'm trading out of, we got you, Ayush. When you look at this structure of teams, if somebody just lost Diggs and they look like they need another wide receiver to fill in, then he's definitely worth trading, right? And when I look at your team,
you look at the rest of his receiving room, he can certainly move them.
You can
if I were you, Dan, and you're looking to move him, I'm pairing him with Higgins, and I'm going to get a good return for him.
Yeah,
I think he could be a piece with Higgins to get you an AJ Brown.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fair. And that's perfectly fair, Dan. But I think that when I look at your team, you're starting CeeDee Lamb on a week-to-week basis. You're most likely rolling out Chris Olave for sure. But there's a lot of, I think Cedric Tillman is more of is one of those waiver wire wide receivers, because we were talking about Juwan Jennings and we were talking about like what a couple weeks ago, what wide receivers are left to be spending our fab budget on. And Tillman has a role. He has a quarterback that's going to utilize the role. Deshaun Watson isn't coming back anytime soon. So unless he gets hurt, his role is defined on this team. He's not losing it. And that's the piece that needs to be considered versus guys like D-Hop, whose role with Juju coming back might be a little bit more undefined. And I think that that's something that I would definitely consider moving forward if I have Cedric Tillman. So let's get through a couple of quick hits here, and then the next deep dive is Ayush. So Ayush, you are the next deep dive on the list. We're going to clear up a couple of quick hits, and then Ayush, we are going to go to your deep dive after that. And after Ayush, we got a couple more deep dives coming down on the space. Harsh, we see you. Jesse, we see you. Nick, Steve, Tyler, Craig, we see everybody there. Gabriel, we see you as well. So let us get into it here. Joe, pull up that next question.
Alrighty. And if I missed someone's quick hitter, let me know, because I believe where we left off was right here with Bryce's.
Yeah, we left off with Bryce, so let's jump in.
That's the last one we did, right?
Let's jump into this from Jackson. Are we expecting a Garrett Wilson trade this season? Joe is. I'm not. Realistically speaking,
No, Garrett Wilson's not getting traded in real life.
Yeah, we were just talking. You were just talking about Garrett Wilson to Detroit, and that would be a nice thing to kind of dream about for Garrett Wilson. But realistically, when it comes down to it, I don't think the Texans.
If I said Garrett Wilson, I apologize. I meant Myles Garrett, the defensive end from Cleveland.
Oh, yeah. No. You did say Garrett Wilson.
I said the wrong one then. It's Myles Garrett.
When it comes to wide receivers, with Deontay going to the Ravens, I think, with the conversation of Mike Williams, with the conversation of Cooper Kupp that people have had, I think realistically speaking that these are the two teams that feel like they need a wide receiver, but I don't think the Texans are going to make a move. I don't think that Garrett Wilson profiles for their team logistically well right now.
No, the Texans are not adding another piece to the receiving room. They're going to wait to get healthy. Their most valuable player right now is Mixon, so that's kind of weird.
I don't think it's going to happen. Should I trade Kraft and Pittman for Jonathan Brooks? Steve, I really think that this is an interesting trade.
That's part of his deep dive, I believe.
I think this is an interesting trade, Steve, 562, because Steve with the double line had a question that's different than this.
Too many Steves. I love you, Steve.
So, Steve, with this question here, I would consider it. Kraft is one of those tight ends that Joe and I haven't been super high on, but he's been producing regardless. With Jordan Love, with the difference between Jordan Love and Malik Willis, it's really hard to tell where that will turn out. And maybe Jordan Love plays, maybe he doesn't. So, if you're selling Kraft and you have an alternate tight end and you pair him with Pittman, because Pittman is a guy that could potentially be on the rise, a perfectly fine guy to target would be Jonathan Brooks because he's a total unknown entity, right? Are they going to give him a lot of time this year with Bryce Young at quarterback? When is Andy Dalton coming back? Is Andy Dalton going to be the starter in future games once he comes back from the car accident and stuff? I realistically think that if I'm making a move for a running back today and I'm using these two players, I think I could get more than Jonathan Brooks, but I think it's reasonable, Steve, to go after and target Jonathan Brooks. But just know that, Carolina with Bryce Young is not a strong team. Carolina with Andy Dalton is. So you're giving up two.
No, that's an exaggeration. It's a stronger team.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, by comparison. So
yeah.
As I see it, would I do this trade? If I had room to move Kraft, sure, I'd think about doing this trade, especially if you wanted to move off Pittman. But with Flacco in, I think Pittman all of a sudden becomes a more valuable asset. And we knew this. We were talking about Pittman, and that was the case with Pittman for such a long time, Steve. AT got sent an offer. Trade away my Cup and Hubbard for Gibbs. Yes, I would do this, AT.
Yes.
Not knowing the rest of your team, I would do this. I think Gibbs is a way solid asset on a team that, is just pummeling everything. Now, it could be that later on in the season they let up on the brakes, but Dan Campbell's not that type of guy.
No, he's not.
So I think that Gibbs is going to be a valuable asset moving forward. I do think Cup is going to be a valuable asset as well, but Hubbard is a devaluating asset. And I really, if I could sell Hubbard and Cup for Gibbs, I would. Nick, which defense do I target? I've got Saints.
Well, we got Baltimore as the number 2 defense this week, so they're on your list. That'd be the one I'd go for.
Bengals, Broncos, Ravens available in my league. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. I remember, I recall, and although the Panthers aren't a strong team, I don't think the Saints are a solid enough play this week. I do agree with Joe that the Ravens are a decent play this week. Bengals with the Raiders the way they are, although they're not a strong team, they're worth a look in a way. And then when it comes to the Commanders, they play the Giants. Out of that group, I know a couple people got back at you on this, Nick. The Broncos look the best on paper, but the matchup is a little bit harder for them. So I think Joe's absolutely right that the Ravens seem like a reasonable play, even though they've been playing like, their pass defense has been playing like garbage.
Yeah, but I think Bo Nick's going to split it.
Yeah, I think I'm on the Bengals, though. I know they've looked like trash, too. But ideally, I really wouldn't want any of those guys. But, that's a personal opinion.
I want Baltimore. I think that Denver blew their whole load, and they ain't got it.
Who would you go after on waivers between Tillman, Downs, Shakir, Ridley? How I would order that is probably Downs, Ridley, Tillman, Shakir.
Wow, we are so different.
That's probably how I'd order that. But I could also...
I'm going Shakir 1, Downs 2, Tillman, Ridley.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. This is coming from a guy, Jesse. You've watched me talk about Ridley for some time now, and I think that I value Tillman and I value Downs and Shakir a little bit more. But if Ridley's going to be force fed this ball, 10, 12, 13 targets a game, he's got to do something with them. I mean, if he catches them from Mason Rudolph, I mean. Ideally, there's a world, though, Joe, where I could order this down Shakir Tillman, and I wouldn't even have a problem with that. So
yeah, they're all good choices, but not if all 4 of them are available, do not waste the waiver priority.
Yeah, I'm still on Downs, though, Jesse, as my number 1. Shakir's role is really nice, but I'm on Downs with Joe Flacco. Downs with Joe Flacco has looked really good. Quick hitter, would I start Dell versus Sauce Gardner, Coleman, Tillman, Downs, start 2? I think Dell is a must start this week, even in so far as he plays Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot to say about the Jets defense for sure. But when we
There's a
look
lot to
at,
say about the Jets quitting for sure. And that needs to be, that's an understated thing. I am not worried at all against Dell against Sauce. This team is one half away from everyone starting their reservations for the Caribbean. And that's Mixon tears them apart, it's over. And I think that's what's gonna happen.
yeah,
So
and realistically, Tyler, one of the reasons that I am on Dell this week is because Dell actually does pretty good in man coverage. And I know that Sauce is one of the best defenders he's going to face this year. But if Mixon is annihilating them through the run game, which he definitely could definitely do, what I'm looking at is red zone plays. If they're going to run Mixon 30 times, 25 times a game, Mixon's going to lead them down to the red zone. And I think that that's where the value in Tank Dell is this week. So that's how I fall on that, Tyler. And in regards to the other guy that I would start, I don't think that I would start Tillman this week with everything that I've said about Tillman.
yeah, it's either Downs or Coleman. It's basically what it's gonna come down to.
I think that realistically speaking, Keon
I think
Coleman,
Buffalo's gonna be in a shootout against Miami. I want to basically get any part of that game I can.
Yeah, I think that I am on Keon Coleman in that game. I think that Downs is a great start, a great option this week, but I would go Dell and Coleman, just because of the way like they run. Miami runs man a decent amount of times, and Coleman has been a player that has exposed that with the way that he plays. I think a realistic expectation for Coleman this week is something like three catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. And I think that Downs will get a little bit more volume than that. Again, Coleman is a boom play. He's not a volume play.
That's
So
right.
just take that into consideration when you look at that. Nick, and our next deep dive is Ayush. So we're going to go through a couple.
Actually, Bob, I kind of messed up the deep dive order because I clicked them in the wrong way.
Well, we said the next deep dive is Ayush, so that's what we're going to get to.
Yeah, Ayush is still the next one, but after that, we're gonna have to.
Nick,
we'll go.
Need to start 3 wide receivers this week. I can't trust Jaden Reed this week. He doesn't do well against man coverage. When it comes to what Detroit does good, even if Love is playing, I don't think that I trust Jaden Reed this week. So then it comes down to I like I said, I'm most likely playing Dell. I think he's a must start, right? He's a must start. When it comes down to these other 3 guys,
well, you're playing a Maw. I mean, there's no way you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can bench Amon-Ra even with the volume concerns that
you can't
that you have, because they've been such an efficient offense. And Amon-Ra does good at so many aspects of the game that he's one of those players that they don't have to force him the ball, but he does good when he's given the ball. So I think where I would order this is probably Dell, Brown, and Devonta Smith. I'd have to look up a couple more things about Devonta Smith, but I think that those would be the 3 players that I start this week.
And likewise. So are we jumping into the deep dives now, or are we going?
No, let's clear up a couple more. Of these. Steve,
all right, Bob, you're in charge of the queue for the quick hitters because I'm going to mess it up.
Steve recommends taking the Broncos D and keeping them to the rest of the season. The Broncos are worth picking up if you need a defense, but this matchup against Baltimore is a little bit concerning.
Broncos, except for Kansas City, they don't play that much.
Yeah, Broncos is definitely a play for the long term. Who do I flex this week? Waddle, Tillman, Andrews, Mostert. My initial lean on this is Waddle.
Mine's Mostert.
Waddle. There's reason to believe that Andrews will get one of those touchdowns. His target share has been gradually going up.
And there's also reason to believe he disappears.
There will be opportunities for him in the red zone. So if you want to play that game, you can. This is a matchup that Waddle should do good in. I know it's hard to bench a guy that just got 25 points in Tillman, but again, this really is dependent upon the fact that the Chargers, they have a good defense, and they've been holding the line a lot. So, yeah. Steve, Nick says that they might get torched by Baltimore. Absolutely. I think I agree with that. Even versus Sauce. Yes, even versus Sauce.
Yes.
Sauce is an amazing corner. Sauce is able to negate a lot of players in a lot of games. But if they're going, what I'm looking at for Dell is red zone looks. Okay. Because I think that the Jets, I know that the Jets aren't really good run defense. Okay. And Mixon should tear them up on the ground. And so if that's the case and they're able and they need a pass catcher, they're going to have to use Dell. Dell's floor is lower, but I think his ceiling is pretty high. I'm looking at probably a stat line that is similar to what he got last week in 6 catches or 4 to 6 catches, 60 yards or more, and a touchdown, something like that. Broncos are one of the best defenses out there because of the way that the offense runs. The offense runs a decent amount. Their quarterback runs, but they're put into decent enough situations. They've played some garbage teams. They've played some good teams. So that's something to consider. Should I drop Warren for Tyrone Tracy at running back? I think, Nick, when it comes to this, Tyrone Tracy, even with the concussion, has proved to me that he should be the starting running back for the Giants. So
would I
drop Warren if that's the player that I had to drop? Yes, I would. Harsh, do you view Higgins and Kupp having similar floors the rest of the season? No. I was thinking of giving Kupp for Higgins and Chase Brown. If you need a running back, it's reasonable to think that Chase Brown is going to be good rest of season. We talked about Chase Brown a couple weeks ago. And my opinion about Chase Brown really hasn't changed. He's going to get opportunities, but he's got to play better when because this line's not really good. So he's got to play better in other facets of the game to get more looks. And I don't want to move Kupp into Higgins, to be honest with you. I think Kupp is a better player on a team of equal skill position players. But they have a better running back there in at the Rams. So I think that I think it's crazy, right? That I wouldn't want to move into Higgins, and Joe has a lot of opinions about Higgins, which we're not going to get into right now. But yeah. Higgins is a player that Joe is selling, not buying. We were right about Tracy starting in the flex, but you started Bigsby instead. Remember what we said about Bigsby last week. Bigsby, the game script might not have been his favor. He did still look good in the opportunities given. I like that. This week, the Ravens, but if the Broncos were available in my league, I'd take them in an instant. Craig, should I worry about Brian Thomas Jr. and I'd waiver George Pickens on bye to bring in Shakir? I keep Debo on the bench. Yeah, Debo is a player that eventually, more likely than not, people are going to end up starting. He was drafted for most people as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and his value with the injuries is the only thing holding him back. Now he's dealing with something rib injury. We knew this when we bought into Debo. We know that Debo is the guy that this happens to a lot. But we know when Debo's in the game and he plays a full game, that his floor is approximately, if given the right opportunities, is approximately 8 to 10 points. His ceiling is 20 or higher, right? So when I look at what you have, I'm not worried about BTJ in the long term, but I'm also not comfortable rolling him out this week because another hit and that could be really damaging for him. So I think they hold him out this week personally, but we'll see what happens with that. And wavering George Pickens, I think that George Pickens is a nice get. But if you want to throw George Pickens to get Shakir, I think that's also something reasonable to do with all the talk that the Steelers might go out and get another wide receiver to support Russell Wilson. But I think Pickens is in a good situation with Russell Wilson rather than with Fields. Joe, what's your opinion on that one?
I still don't think they're going to.
I don't either. The Steelers are our team, but they play. What they decide to do is way crazy. So we're gonna clear through Gabriel's quick hit here, and then we're gonna get to Ayush's deep dive, and then we'll get back into the quick hits, guys.
Awesome.
Love the spider webs. Thanks, Bones. Working out of school. I was putting up some Halloween decorations, so you're going to see some spider webs and probably some spiders on there tomorrow, at the very least. So where was I here? So we had that question here. We had Craig's here. Nick, my running backs are Bijan, Pollard, and JK. Do I need to make changes and go out and pick up a different running back on waivers or make a trade? No. I think if you're going to, Pollard would be the guy I move. Okay. The team feels like a sinking ship, but he's, like I said yesterday, Nick, he's getting the opportunities. He's doing a lot with the opportunities because his offensive line is garbage. So eventually, like Joe shared yesterday, there is a very likely chance that he is going to break down. Okay.
Yep.
So if I'm owning Pollard, I'm preparing for that. But also Pollard's value right now will not move you into much. You'll have to move a wide receiver plus a running back to maybe move. I mean, last week you could have probably moved into a James Cook pretty easily with people, myself included, being a little bit nervous about the toe. This week,
unless the guy who was banking on Mason really just needs a guy this week, you can't get much for Pollard.
You might be able to pair him up with a guy who's worried about Ken Walker. Those are trades that you should begin to think about. And Gabriel will answer your quick hit, and then we'll get back into the deep dive there, and we'll get back into the quick hitters after that. I have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson. I need a running back. What do I do from here? Any trade targets? Well, I'm moving either Adams or Wilson, and I think for my money, and I know Joe and I differ on this, he values Adams more than I value him, and I value Wilson more than he values more than I value.
Under the clause, they're both Jets, and you shouldn't want either one.
If I think that Garrett Wilson still has more value. So if you're moving one of them, Garrett Wilson will get you more in return. And I would be targeting the Nico Collins owner, Gabriel, if I had time to, and I'd be targeting the Mike Evans owner. Now, we haven't gotten an update on Mike Evans yet. I wouldn't do a lateral trade. I might consider a lateral trade Wilson for Nico, but also they were dealing with hamstrings. So wide receivers and hamstrings, they need to heal up from that to do pretty good. So if I have the time, I would move Wilson into Nico and somebody else. But I think Devontae Adams could probably move you into Mike Evans right now. And that's just a personal choice. If you're looking for a healthy player, you might be able to move Garrett Wilson into a Drake London or a Chris Olave and something else. But it really just depends on what you prefer. I would rather hold Garrett Wilson and trade Adams, but Adams right now doesn't have a lot of trade value. So Ayush, let's get into your deep dive here, and then we'll get back into the quick hits after that. Deep dive here for Ayush. I have Allen, Saquon, Chase Brown, Tyreek Zay, Laporta Pickens, Aubrey, Braylon Allen, Corum, Leggett, Mostert, Juju, Tyron, Tracy. What do I do? There's a 5-way tie for first and a 5-way tie for second. So the chopping block is crazy close. That's like how it is in my league.
What are you all at 500 or one game below it? Like that is crazy.
And who do I drop to make space? I have Zay, so I'm disappointed, but I do have Leggett, so that's a little bit of a boom. Amon-Ra and Moss, and I give Chase Brown, Pickens, and Flowers. Okay. So let's talk.
I don't want to give Pickens and Flowers, one or the other. That will be my counter.
So up here, you said we'll see how the new team is. So the team would look like Allen, Saquon, Mostert, Tracy, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Laporta, Leggett, Aubrey, Braylon Allen, Corum, Juju, Tua. And as far
if you put either Flowers or Pickens on there by saving him from the trade, I like this team a whole lot more. I'm not necessarily worried about this team, though. I mean, I like its potential moving forward. Again, I want Leggett out of my flex for either Porter or either Pickens or Flowers. But overall, I like the direction you did here. I really liked it. I might go for a little sneaky deep dive here and try to see if Tua has a big blow-up game. I might want to get Goff on this roster. Just because I love stacks. I love stacks probably too much. But that would be basically the direction I did. And also knowing that you could do Tua and Juju and get an upgrade. Upgrade. That's all I would be looking at this, Ayush.
I'm going to throw something crazy at you right now. And
you can
take it for what it's worth. Okay. Now, with the way quarterbacks have been playing off the waiver wire recently, you can try to power, and I know what we've been talking about with trading quarterbacks as a piece in a trade and not being the primary trade thing that we move. But I would be okay moving Allen, not this week, but maybe next week if Tua has another good game. And I would be okay moving Allen and some pieces to upgrade and give me more confidence in my second running back spot so that I can move Mostert or Tracy to my flex. And to be honest with you, the pathway that I would probably take to get this done would be looking at your team. You had Flowers, right? And you had Pickens. So I would take, because people aren't going to be super high on Flowers right now, just to be, it's not an understatement that Deontay Johnson being there might affect some people's viewpoint about Zay Flowers right now. So your strength that you have there is looking at Pickens, looking at Allen, and maybe people want to talk to you about Juju. And to be honest with you, I get, Craig, you're welcome. I get what you're going for here with Amon-Ra. But I know that what we've said about Amon-Ra, he's a guy that we both like. He's a guy that, is going to be valuable for the Detroit Lions as we move forward. But in my mind, Amon-Ra is not the player I'm targeting, okay, for your team specifically, okay? Because looking at your team, you have a team that has a lot of high performers with high floors and potential boom to them in Tracy.
Yeah, this is a team that should separate from the pack.
Tracy, Saquon, Tyreek. You're going out there and you wanted to get Amon-Ra. I think that if you package Allen in a deal with Flowers or Pickens or somebody else, you can then reframe this conversation and keep Chase Brown for the future of your team, or and maybe you want to pair Chase Brown and a quarterback, or Chase Brown, one of those wide receivers, and Allen, and move yourself into a J-Jeff or if you can still buy into CD depending on their quarterback situation. Looking at the quarterback situation, where I'd be targeting is people that own Patrick Mahomes, people who might be unsteady on the performance of Kyler Murray, guy with Jordan Love and Caleb Williams. I'd be looking at those guys and seeing what I could do. And I would say to myself, okay, looking at these schedules coming up, CD has one of those schedules that is going to be elite if Dak continues to put it together with CD. Amon-Ra is really going to be handcuffed by this running game towards the finish line of this season. And, if Goff is only throwing 85, 200 yards a game or 185 yards a game, how does that fit into the endpoint stat line of Amon-Ra? So I don't want to give up 3 players in this for your team specifically, because Amon-Ra's floor this season at least is not that much different than Flowers and Pickens's, and his ceiling isn't much different either. So in my viewpoint of this, I want to go out and get a guy with the highest ceiling of the bunch. And if I have to move Allen to do that, or if I have to put Allen in a piece, Ayush, that's what I'm considering. I know it's crazy to think about trading Allen, but also we've seen that Allen's one of those quarterbacks that will have a top 5 week and then have a top 15 week. And right now, you could really get that out of most quarterbacks in the league outside of a Deshaun Watson or an Anthony Richardson. So that's kind of how I fall on that, Ayush. We can talk more about it if you'd like, but Amon-Ra wouldn't be my target for your team. I think
I don't have a problem with Amon being the target of your team.
I think he makes a lot of teams better, but I don't think he makes your team specifically better.
Honestly, I'm not in agreement on that. The only thing I really want to trade about this is give him a counter offer where he gets Pickens or Flowers, not both. and then, like I said, spin it around.
This is a worry. This is a concern. But again,
yeah, I get that that's a concern, but they're also not going to start sitting them early enough that it's going to affect the playoffs.
What we said
Remember,
about Dan
Detroit's
Campbell
probably
is,
getting a real life bye week, and then they also have a regular season week before your championship.
yeah. And
So
what we said about
Alejandro,
Dan
I don't
Campbell,
want to. That is too far downfield to worry about because you're not sitting players for 3 weeks entering the playoffs. That
but
is
Dan
not
Campbell
what
doesn't
Dan
pump the
Campbell's all
brakes,
about.
Joe. Dan Campbell doesn't pump the brakes. We know this.
No, he doesn't.
Started. I mean, he started players and they ended up getting hurt. He wants to win. He wants Detroit to be the best team that they can be.
Just to give you guys the DDQ, coming up here down the fence, Steve.
Comcast struck again, Joe. Comcast struck again. Nick, most reliable wide receiver between Ladd, Tillman, or Downs?
All right, so here's your DDQ. It's Steve, Jesse, Colin.
Okay.
What's that?
Nick, how I would order these would be Ladd, Downs, Tillman. How I would order these would be Ladd, Downs, and Tillman. I think Ladd is in a great position.
That's right.
Flacco has doubled up on Richardson. 49ers have a bye. Thielen, CMC might come back. Yeah, CMC might come back, but again, he's basically got restructured 2 Achilles. We'll see what kind of volume they do get him. Again, what we said at the beginning of the year with George Plays is that it is realistic to think that Mason or Garendo will still have a good split so that they can keep CMC healthy if, in fact, they do make the playoffs. Jackson, drop D-Hop, Ladd, Bigsby, or Hawk for Garendo. I'm not dropping any of those players for Garendo, realistically speaking, Jackson. I think that all of those players have a high value on their teams where they're at. If you're planning on starting Garendo and you're not planning on starting D-Hop this week, then I'd drop D-Hop for Garendo.
But that's only if you're starting him.
Yeah, that's only if you plan on starting Garendo this week. If you're not planning on starting Garendo, I would rather stick with what I got there. George, trade Amon-Ra, Devontae Adams, and Ferguson. I have Njoku for A.J. Brown and Garrett Wilson. Amon-Ra, I don't like the rest of the season from a consistency standpoint. Wilson has been better than Adams. This is what we just talked about, George. So I'm glad that this question is in here. Amon-Ra is one of the best wide receivers in football. Don't get me twisted on that. Amon-Ra, when given the opportunities, can go 10 for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He has that ceiling. Don't get that twisted from me. That's not what I'm saying. But when we look at how Detroit could navigate the rest of this season, if they don't have to use Amon-Ra like that, they're not going to. Dan Campbell's not that type of coach. And if I can move into A.J. Brown right now, I think a move from Amon-Ra into A.J. Brown is something that I actually like, that I would want to be on board with. Devontae and
I don't think you're getting enough in return, dude. George, I think you should be getting a piece much better than Garrett Wilson with A.J. Brown.
I'm there with you, but I don't think this is a bad trade. You're not starting Ferguson. Njoku's playing better. Devontae Adams has been wide receiver 47 and 57 over the last 2 weeks. Wilson has outperformed him those last 2 weeks. While I agree with Joe that I don't really want either of these Jets wide receivers, if I'm moving into A.J. Brown right now and basically I'm giving up Amon-Ra for A.J. Brown, I think that's a fairly lateral to plus move over the rest of the season with the way that they should be using A.J. Brown. And with Devontae and Ferguson, Ferguson for your team has 0 value for your team right now with Njoku. So moving off of Ferguson and moving off Adams to move into Garrett Wilson, I think is fair, but I do agree with Joe that I don't really want Wilson or Adams. But out of the two, I'd rather have Wilson than Adams, and Joe disagrees on that. Quick hit here. Garrett Wilson or Terry. I'm on Terry.
Yeah, for the rest of the season, absolutely I'm on Terry. I think the Jets are going to implode.
I think that Daniels has proven that he is one of the top quarterbacks, at least this year in the league, and Aaron Rodgers is not. So, the Washington does a lot of things right. Jets do a lot of things. Are they right or not? I don't know. But Terry McLaurin's
Or
outlook
Jets, yeah.
Terry McLaurin's outlook is positive.
That's right.
So I'm on Terry.
So
D-Wave.
D-Wave, you're getting offered Walker and Murray for Robinson, Thomas. You currently have, that's your roster. What are our thoughts of doing this? So, given the fact that your backs right now could use a little bit of an upgrade, I'm not opposed to it off the surface. I don't want Kyler Murray though. I'd want to rework it so you're not getting Kyler Murray and you're getting either a true 2-for-1 and just getting a better player than Walker in the first place, or just getting a different piece than Murray on the back end.
Yeah, I'm with you, D-Wave. This is the problem with the quarterback situation. Kyler Murray does have some games on the schedule that he's going to perform better in than potentially Brock Purdy. But I'm being offered Ken Walker. I don't know if you're holding on to Brian Robinson and Brian Thomas Jr. I think that Brian Thomas Jr. has a good outlook rest of the season as long as he can stave off that injury bug, to be honest with you. But how I fall on this is if you like Ken Walker and you've looked into that and you've looked into the rest of the season, Ken Walker is going to have some good games. But I don't think you need Kyler Murray. I don't know why you would want to move into Kyler Murray. It's a fair.
Well, he was offered it. The guy wanted out of Kyler Murray more than he wanted into it.
Right. I don't see you needing Kyler Murray, to be honest.
Yeah, so just throw it back, get a modified piece, and go from there. I gotta tell you, I like that you did that trade, man. I like that you got Puka, Walker, Debo. I get that the Debo information might not be as hot, but dude, getting rid of Kamara, I like where you're at with that. I like this trade. I'm really big on Puka rest of the year.
And we got you, Ayush and Quincy and George C. We did just answer your question, George C. So you can, if you're still here, you can go back and listen in. But Nino, I like this. We talked about this yesterday, I believe. This is a trade that you can even build off and trade other pieces from. So you could keep Puka and Kenny, and you could trade Debo and Reed for something else if you wanted to. You're moving off some pieces that have some tricky schedules coming up again. Jamar's could be tricky, but he's an alpha. So, he can supersede that schedule. Kamara is one of those guys where his value's really into the markets of pass catching. And that's when we look at what the schedules throw down, that market is not really included into if they're good against running back. And that was what the play against Javonte was last week is Javante's a good pass catching running back. He didn't catch a lot of passes because Carolina doesn't really do that. That thing needs to be considered when we look at the back ends of this. Arrow, when we look at your team from yesterday, you got a trade offer for Debo, James Conner for AJ Brown, with the only contingency being that CMC practices in week 9. Thoughts? I like AJ Brown. Arrow, that's how I fall on this. I really like AJ Brown, and I do like Debo a lot rest of season, but I prefer AJ Brown more. So I don't remember your team completely, Arrow, but if I'm going and I'm on the AJ Brown side, I would want AJ Brown. So anything I could do to get into AJ Brown.
And that's how I look at that. So, Nino, to answer your question, Legette's value goes up. Long story short, doesn't become through the roof. He doesn't become the next J. Jeff, but he does project to be somewhere around 25-ish when all's said and done.
Yeah, and when we look at it, I know, Nino, that you did the trade yesterday, but I do think that overall you will benefit from this deal. You will benefit from this deal. He is dealing with all the rib injuries and all this stuff. It's not a super concern because you got Puka back in that deal. And Nino, my thoughts on this question is I think that Thielen is a better play than Legette. Personal opinion. I think that Thielen is a better play than Legette. Legette is, a rookie. Still,
He got a
Bryce Young's
touchdown
not a
last
very
week.
good
He
quarterback.
is their future. He's who they're going to be going
He
into.
is, but
Thielen is is
um,
phased out. These guys are
Mark,
getting boomed out. So, Mark, answer
lat,
your question. With McConkey's boom week, is he a 1 week wonder, or do we see him? He's absolutely rising the rest of the season. He has settled in and took a hold of the old Keenan Allen position. He is their volume guy. He is going to give you a steady floor. I ain't promising 2 touchdowns. I don't even know if Keenan Allen ever did 2 touchdowns in a game back when he was there. But what I'm saying is it might be his high of the season. It probably is, but I think that he's a pretty much a stable 15 for the rest of the year. And I really love the direction that lad's going. He's one of the guys that we were huge on preseason.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, Joe, that Justin Herbert likes him. The coaching staff likes him. He does a lot right. Gordon, I traded Jane
I mean, who doesn't like first downs?
I traded Jane Daniels for James Cook. I like that. I think it's a W right now.
Yeah.
I really do. If you can move a quarterback for a skill, anytime you can move a quarterback for a skill position player of value, I think it's a W. I do think Jane Daniels is a W of a quarterback as well. But James Cook is a player that, outside of the toe injury that I was really nervous about, that I've loved all year, Joe. And you can go back to
that's right. But the fundamental fact is, anytime you're moving a quarterback to fulfill a need, it's a win. All right.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Betting question. Love this. Thursday, we got Moneyline Texans, Mixon touchdown, Rodgers passing touchdown. Are we hitting? I think Rodgers is going to get hit a lot. I wouldn't want to put the Rodgers touchdown. I know that you want to get the same game parlay built. What I would want to look into in a different direction would probably be, and this might be blasphemous, but I want to do, or not blasphemous all. This is some sports books let you do this same game parlay, some don't. I want to change the Rodgers touchdown to Jets punt on their first drive. That's what I would want to do for my Thursday night same game parlay.
For me, I think that I would probably be, I'd have to look at the market a little bit more, but I'd be on a Dell touchdown. I'd be on Dell plus 40 probably. And then Wilson for like 4 receptions. Yeah, but I haven't looked at those markets yet. I don't like the Aaron Rodgers plus 1 touchdown, but if they want to win, it's going to have to happen.
They ain't going to win.
Have we touched on streaming defenses at all? Yeah, we've touched on streaming defenses a little bit. We do have Baltimore ranked pretty high, Bones. But when it comes down to it,
yeah, it'll scroll across in the background as well.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, I'm Joe. I'm not a huge fan of Baltimore this week because of the emergence of Bo Nix. But it's very likely that what Baltimore does well, that Bo Nix will kind of be clamped up. So
this is a quick hitter, so I can't go off on it. That Bo Nix was the definition of smoke and mirrors. I have zero fear that Baltimore's not going to light his ass up. Zero fear.
Yeah, I mean,
Denver might score the least. I can't say that because Carolina still exists. Denver might score the least amount of points on the AFC this week. Like, that's how I feel.
It's possible. But again, the Giants don't look good, and if they don't have Tyrone Tracy, I think the Commanders are a good enough play. Steve, to follow up from you here, Steve. Yeah, if you have Ingram and you're moving Kraft and you have AJ Brown, JSN, Waddle, and Worthy, I think it's fine to move on from Pittman. So, Steve, if you're still here, I'd do the trade for Brooks. I think you could get a little bit more, but I'd do that trade for Brooks. The Ravens have stuck to defense this year. They absolutely have.
Oh, you're right. They were right, but so has Denver.
So, Tyler, you have Dell, not Mixon. Like I said, I like Dell this week. I still like Dell this week. So when we look at it, Dell is definitely the pathway for Dell is going to be through a touchdown in the red zone, Joe. That's the pathway for Dell to be successful this week, I think. Jesse, would you drop the Bears defense for the Lions or the Eagles defense? I was just looking at that. I think it's reasonable to assume that the Eagles defense, if available in your league, is a defense that's worth picking up this week.
Jackson will be in trouble.
Facing facing Parker Washington, an injured BTJ, big speed Trevor Lawrence, probably going to make a lot of mistakes while while they're not the best defense in the week, I think that if you have the availability to stream them, I'd stream the Eagles. And I think the Lions aren't a red herring. If Malik, and I know Matt LaFleur is a good coach, and he'll coach Malik Willis up if Jordan Love can't play. But the Lions, if you have special teams touchdowns as part of it, the Lions are definitely worth it. Craig, I believe we answered your question earlier. If we didn't,
if they
please
get
go
one
back
of
in
the
the
two
stream
stuff,
or post it again. AT, answering your question in Cup and Chuba for Gibbs' question, my wide receivers are Lamb, Cup, Higgins, Dell, Worthy, Hopkins, Coleman, Hubbard, A-Chain, Chubb. Yes. You do need to do that. It clears up Hubbard from your lineup. Chubb and Singletary should not be starting for you right now. You have Coleman on the back end. This is unequivocal yes for us, AT. An unequivocal yes for us.
Oh, yeah.
Craig, we got you. We did get you. I remember answering your question, Craig. If you want us to do it again, just put it back down in the chat. Just got offered DJ Moore for Deontay Johnson. Do I take it? Victor, Deontay Johnson stocks were way up for us yesterday. But as the stock market goes, they're way down for me today on the Baltimore offense. I don't know what his role is going to be. I really don't. And I don't really
I agree with that. His stock is going down.
If I could do this, I would move into DJ Moore. But again, I don't really like any of these guys.
No, that's
long
fair.
term or short term. If I had to choose, Victor, if you said, you're going to give me a swirly, if you don't choose, give me DJ Moore over Deontay Johnson. But I don't like either situation right now. You're welcome, Craig. Absolutely. Quincy, do you think Tracy is the starter? I absolutely unequivocally think Tracy is the starter. The dude, Joe was texting me last night and he goes, Tracy's balling out. Tracy's balling out. Then he gets hurt. That doesn't take away. Tracy's looked like a dude. I mean, Tracy's doodler.
Opposite.
Comcast, Joe.
I want out of Chicago's home.
Yeah, I understand you want out of Chicago's offense, but we're on.
You got Comcast again, Bob.
What do you think about Tracy?
I like him. I like Tracy as the starter. Sorry, I got Comcast on you again.
Jackson, would you trade Charbonnet, Chase Brown, and Amari for Tyrone Tracy and Devonta Smith? Yeah, if I could. If I could trade those three guys for Tyrone Tracy and Devonta Smith, I would, because I think there's more security in
that's a very good long-term play there, Jackson.
Yeah, I think there's more security in Devonta Smith, but you are going to have to play this week with the potential that Tyrone Tracy will not play this week with the concussion. He's in concussion protocol. He's young, so they're probably going to take it easier on him. Josh, do I sell on Breece? No, I'm not selling Breece Hall yet. Breece Hall is still a buy for me. He's still a buy for me. The schedule looks good down in and here's the thing. Although he was like the 30th ranked running back in PPR this week, he still put up 87 yards. Tank Bigsby put up like 86 yards. They're gonna this was a total red herring of a play. We talked about this going into this game, that this game it was going to be a weird one. I remember talking about it to you, Joe. I remember talking about it to everybody here. That game wasn't going to be the game that we thought it was going to be, and it wasn't. So I'm still in on Breece. And Jackson, yes, even in a PPR league, if you are confident in Tracy, I like Tracy and Devonta Smith long term. But if the injury plays a role in how that's going to play out for your team, you might want to consider maybe putting this off until next week. It just depends. Rushi, do I do Bucky Irving, Kupp, and Swift for Aaron Jones, Garrett Wilson, and Kraft? No, I don't. While I like Aaron Jones a lot, and I think Aaron Jones is worth moving into unequivocally, Aaron Jones, for anybody looking for a running back, Aaron Jones is a guy that's worth going after. He was worth going after prior to the injury, and now he's back in. I don't really want him. I'm not really moving into Garrett Wilson and Kraft here. I think that Bucky, Irving, Kupp, and Swift should be fine for your team long term. But as I'm looking at this, you're giving up two running backs. So obviously you might be struggling a little bit into the tight end department. Tight end markets that you probably want to get into, if you still can, might be that Cade Otton tight end market. You could buy low into the Ferguson market. You could play dealer's choice and try to go after Brock Bowers. If I were trying to get a tight end, that's kind of what I'd do. I see what you're trying to do here, Rushi, but I don't think I'd do that trade. Jesse, should I trade Hunt for Drake London? I have Gibbs, Monty, Cook, and Isaiah Pacheco on IR. Hunt's going to be a valuable play moving forward in the season. If you need a wide receiver, and you
should be able to get better than London.
And you can move Hunt for London. If you're satisfied with that, I would do that. The volume is there. The volume will continue to be there. So if you do need a wide receiver that has volume, go after him. He's going to throw up disappointing weeks. We just saw one this week. So just make that very clear. Hunt, they're going to use them until he's dead. And I want to be very clear about that.
I think you should get better at London, though.
So, Jesse, your wide receivers were Amon-Ra, Amari Cooper, Juju, Jamario Douglas, and the running backs are Gibbs, Monty, Cook. With the way your wide receiver room sits right now, I would do that because Drake London is a safer option than Amari Cooper right now. So with that being said, I would do that trade. You have the value to do that. And thanks for putting that quick hit in there, Jesse. We answer every question here at Local Football Flavor. So if you don't hear your question right away, do not be afraid. We will answer your question. It just kind of takes us a little bit of time to get there. Ayush, a follow-up to your deep dive here. I just feel like having Saquon, Tyreek, and Amon-Ra would be a power move. Also, I'm not able to get other wide receiver ones because they're not giving up the first pick. I tried trading, but it's not going to work in my league. You've done a lot of trades. I hear you, Ayush. If you can get Amon-Ra, do it. But for all of the reasons that I said to you earlier, that's kind of where I hesitate on Amon-Ra a little bit in reference to your team. So if you want to go out there and do it, and that's the only trade partner you have, by all means, do it. Flacco is now the starter. Would you drop May, Wilson, or Tua for him if he's on the waiver wire? If I'm picking,
I don't think I want him over any of them.
I would. Again, Vikings defense is susceptible to plays. Flacco doesn't care if he throws interceptions. I would drop May for Flacco, or I drop.
Well, May got hurt last week. Is he playing this week?
He's supposed to be not playing this week.
Well, if he's not playing, you got to cut May then.
I would cut May. Our next deep dive coming up will be Jesse. So Jesse,
no, it's not. The next one's Steve. They're in the wrong order. Steve's the next one. It's Steve, then Jesse.
Steve is the next deep dive. Let's clear through a couple more of these quick hits. I want to clear up all these quick hits before we get into the next deep dive, Joe. Jesse, what about Juju or Shakir on waivers? I have Hopkins on my bench, though. I think out of those two players that I'd rather have Shakir over Juju right now. But I can Shakir's role is pretty confident in there. CMC for Gibbs and Brian Thomas Jr. Andre, should you trade CMC for Gibbs and Brian Thomas Jr.? Should I trade CMC for Gibbs and Brian Thomas Jr.? I would. I like Gibbs moving forward.
Love Gibbs.
And you're getting the back end Brian Thomas Jr. You're getting a lot of young value there. And even if Brian Thomas doesn't play a couple games, if you're still in the thick of things, he should be valuable for you moving forward. Again, CMC is super valuable too, but it is such an unknown. He could play only a half each game until they get him worked up. Even if it says he's coming back, maybe they're more cautious with it than we think they're going to be. So that's kind of the concern in general there, Joe, that I have about CMC. If you have the capability to do it, go out and get it.
No, I want to do that trade. I want that Gibbs in return.
Yeah, I want that Gibbs and Brian Thomas Jr. Joe, absolutely right here. So when you think about Detroit players, he's high as a kite on the fact that Detroit is an excellent team right now.
Yeah.
So that needs to be considered. Jesse, again, if you're here, I would trade Hunt for Drake London, knowing your team. Andre, if you're here, I would trade CMC for
Gibbs. Well, they're here. We basically haven't had any drop of the numbers, so they're all here.
And Gordon, I think you did win that deal. Austin, Reed and Chase Brown for Terry McLaurin. Who wins? I think that Reed. Hold on, I gotta close the door.
I think that the Chase Brown element makes it too much. I think you should be able to do the trade outright for Reed and Scary Terry. Terry, I believe, is the best player in the trade, though.
Mm-hmm.
So if it took the little extra chase to get over the top, it's a cost doing business. I just think in normal circumstances, you could have done that as a 1-for-1 receiver. But again, Scary Terry is the best in that trade.
I like Terry. Rumpel, love you, Rumpel. Because Joe, I mean, it's right. It's a fact of life. Rodgers is going to get hit a lot. You know, it's not crazy to think that he gets a touchdown this week. He has the weapons to get the touchdown this week. But again, this game's probably going to be grosser than a lot of people think it is.
It so is.
Just to be clear. And Donnie here.
Quite frankly, guys, like the money line on Houston is the answer. I get that you want to add all the extra props to build up your extra juice, but there is no way the Jets are winning that game.
Yeah.
Puka or London rest of the season. Donnie, this isn't even close for me. Puka by a mile.
Puka or London this week?
It's still Puka.
I think it's still Puka. I think that Drake London's going to have a good enough game. But I do feel that my lean today on Tuesday is Puka, Donnie. So let's get into the deep dives here. So Steve, thanks for sticking around with us. We wanted to clear that queue of quick hits. We wanted to honor those quick hits, and we caught up for us in
and
time.
Here is the Steve. Queue, just so you guys all know your spot. It is Steve, Jesse, Colin. That's where we're at for the next three.
So Steve, breaking news. A guy told me A.J. Brown is almost a deal for Saquon. So if I want Saquon, I need to go get him now. Okay. We got you,
Let's make this happen then, Steve.
So I was offered Saquon and Adams for Kamara, Stafford, and BTJ. You're in a super flex league with Nix and Dak as your other quarterbacks. Stafford is a safe option at quarterback, Steve. I'm not going to write that out. You have BTJ there, but I do like Scary Terry, Hill, McConkey, Juju, Debo moving forward. So I'm okay moving off of BTJ. Looking at your running backs.
I take that trade.
If I could do Henry, Jones, and Saquon, and I don't have to worry about starting a quarterback in my super flex because I could start Henry and Jones in my running back room, and then I could start,
Well, you're still going to start Dak over them because Dak's going to put up more points.
Yeah, Steve, I'm doing that trade.
Yeah, I'm totally doing this trade.
Kamara's, again, what I want to say to you, Steve, about Kamara is that when we look at the stats, and when we look at these matchups and it says, he has a number one running back schedule the rest of the season, that's taking into account running, not pass catching. And a lot of Kamara's past history is in pass catching. He's a great running back.
All of it.
But also, what needs to be said, he isn't escaping the tackles anymore. Okay, so if he's running, it's not like he's getting the open space that he used to get in the running game. The offensive line isn't good. So one of the things that I'm okay with is moving off Kamara, and you're moving into a much better situation here. If I can move, like you said, Adams and if I could get Saquon and Adams and give up Kamara, Stafford, and BTJ, I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that 100%. You counter offered Aaron Jones, Stafford, and BTJ because Kamara playoffs matchups are delicious. And I would still move off of Kamara. But if you are more confident, Steve, in the fact that, when you look at Aaron Jones, that you don't see the value there.
See, I like this trade a lot more than your AJ Brown for Saquon.
No. That is, he has this guy that he's trading with has an offer on the table to move Saquon Barkley into.
Oh, that's what the guy is bidding against him with.
Right.
Yeah, dude, I'd do the trade you had written. I would do the trade as you had written. I'd go for it.
Yeah, and
I like where you're at, Steve.
To allay your fears a little bit here, in terms of Aaron Jones, again, injuries are a part of the game. But as I look at it, and particularly over the next 2 weeks, Colts, Jaguars, then Titans, you just saw all three of those teams. They're capable of getting gashed. Bears, a little bit better. Cardinals, they're capable of getting gashed. Looking back into the playoffs, the last couple of weeks of the season, Bears against Seahawks. We just saw James Cook go off against the Seahawks. And the Packers, Aaron Jones doesn't have that bad of a schedule either. While we believe that while you believe and while we look at it, Kamara could. Aaron Jones is a valuable asset to this team. He just has to stay healthy. So I'm okay holding on to Aaron Jones. And if I'm starting in my running back positions in a super flex league, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, I'm writing my way into a championship. I mean, that's just kind of how I fall on that, Steve. So I'm okay with either one. The playoffs is all that matters. Jones is absolutely more likely to get injured. But also what we need to say is Kamara's already injured. He's dealing with hand. He's dealing with ribs.
I disagree. I think Kamara is more likely to be injured than Jones. I want to say that.
We can
in terms of not playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Saints schedule. I just want to verify and just want to look it up right now. Just look up the playoff part of the schedule here. So coming down to the last couple of weeks of the season, Commanders, Packers, Raiders. That's nice. Giants, that's nice. Rams, that's nice as well. So while I do like it, either way you fall, I would do the trade to get Barkley. I would personally rather keep Aaron Jones because I do like his value moving forward. But if you are comfortable keeping Kamara, then do it. But if he would rather have Kamara and that trade gets done, I don't want to lose out on Saquon Barkley. So that's where I fall on that, Steve.
That's fundamentally the answer. So let's jump into Jesse's dive here.
Mm-hmm. We got you, Lucas, on the next run of quick hits here. But right now we're going to go into Jesse's deep dive. 3-5, and I'm facing the second best ranked guy in my league that has Henry Hill, Aaron Jones, Jaden Reed. Who should I start between Lamb, London, Smith, Dell, MHJ, Hopkins, and Njoku? So Jesse, I'm going to be honest.
This is a need 3, right, Bob?
This is going to be a weird one for you to hear from me, the guy that has told you a lot about the Arizona Cardinals. I'm on MHJ this week.
No.
And it's not for his good performance this past week. It's because the matchup on paper, the matchup will look as a difficult matchup for MHJ. But when you look at the coverages that he's going to face, Kyler Murray does well against them. He does well against them. So while I'm not expecting a huge game in the vein that he had last week, I do think it's reasonable that MHJ is a guy that I want to start this week. Insofar as that is true, I'm also starting CeeDee Lamb.
Well, yeah.
I don't think it's a question. I think CeeDee Lamb has to be in your lineup every single week. So then it comes down to, if I'm starting 3, it comes down to Devonta Smith, Tank Dell. What I said earlier is I think for most teams, Tank Dell is a must start.
Including this one.
Devonta Smith is a good start, but the Jags run man a lot. He does a little bit worse against man. So I think for me, if I'm starting 3 wide receivers, it's Lamb, Dell, MHJ. And as far as the tight ends go, you can't really go wrong, I think, with either of these 2 tight ends.
No, you should be all right with either of them, quite frankly.
And we should have known. We should have known the script, Joe. The NFL threw it right in our face. National Tight End Day.
Well, yeah.
Start the tight ends.
We had a couple of people say that. But so obviously, Jesse, tomorrow is where we're gonna have all of our sits or start sit information outright. So we'll have a dive in this a little better tomorrow. But my answer is gonna be London Lamb and Dell are must starts no matter what. Their situations demand it. And then I can get behind an MH8 play. I can get behind a Devontae Smith play. You're not going to get me on the London or Hopkins bus. For your 2 tight ends, both of them are playing good defenses. And universal tiebreaker, don't take Cleveland. So my fundamental answer is going to be Otton in the tight end spot.
Yeah. All right, let's clear up a couple of these quick hits before we get to the next deep dive. The next deep dive, I believe, is
Next deep dive is going to be Colin. It's going to it's going to be Colin followed by Gabriel and then Nick, and then we should be back to squared up on our side, Bob.
So as it goes here, do I start London or Cook in the flex this week? Joe will tell you, London's not worth a play this week.
Well, I want everything in that Miami Buffalo game. I want any actual starter. I want them. I mean, that's just the fact. I mean, I look at that. That's going to be a huge scoring game. Granted, Atlanta, Dallas could get weird. I don't know what to make of Dallas right now. They're almost like a snake without fangs, but they can do stuff in garbage time. Like, I don't even know if that analogy makes sense. Like, Dallas is just weird. Like, it doesn't make sense.
And I think, let me look at a couple things here, but I do believe my initial lean here on Tuesday, Donnie, is Cook. I want to look at a couple more things, but I do believe my initial lean is Cook, and it's not because he had a great game last week.
No, it's because he's playing Miami. It's gonna be a shootout.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that realistically speaking, it's reasonable to assume that Cook is going to have a decent enough game. But I will caution you that Miami is above average in terms of being able to stop the run. So if he's going to get a lot more play, it's going to be through the passing game, which Miami isn't great against running backs in that respect. So that's just something to keep in mind. Steve, realistically, the playoffs are all that matter. Right now, whether you're 4-4, 4-3, 6-2, 7-8, 9-12, whatever your record is, everybody's shooting for the playoffs. So, and we all know that. And that's the thing, Steve. We all know that. When we're making trades right now, everybody's shooting for the playoffs. So they're going to want to gather guys that they think have good playoff schedules. So your trade partner, that's the reason they're going out and getting Kamara right now, because they're seeing the same thing that you're seeing. They're seeing on paper that and everybody's telling them that Kamara has good value because of his playoff schedule. And so he's getting that same information that you're receiving. But we're giving you a little bit of a different piece of information here. And it's that Aaron Jones is the player we'd rather have over Kamara. Everybody's wanting the same players. Again, most of the fantasy community was all over Javonte Williams this week. We've gotten a lot of things wrong, but we've gotten a lot of things right. One of those things.
We got a lot more. We're at least 2-1 in the right to wrong department, if not more.
I was down on MHJ last week. There was lots of reasons why. However, Javonte Williams was a player that many people were starting, especially in DFS lineups, and he was cooked, man. He was cooked for the same reasons that we said. Lucas, I'm 6-2. Would you rather have Kamara and McLaurin or Breece and London? I would rather have Breece and McLaurin, but I know that's not an option. So for me, in my mind, I'm on Breece and London. But honestly, to tell you the truth, if I have McLaurin, I'm trying to keep McLaurin.
I'd want to do a different trade setup.
Would I trade Ricky Purcell for Rico Dowdle? The news in the fantasy community, as you've seen, it's very inconsistent, especially when it comes to player injuries. Rico Dowdle looked like he came down with an illness before the game. Dalvin Cook was activated. Dalvin Cook sucked.
Dallas, he did after like his fourth hit.
Dallas looks a little
Steve, I look at it like this.
Running back game. I
don't want to, unless you have a gun to your head that you have to make that trade this week. I don't know if I want to do that. And here's the reason. I still think Dallas is getting a real life running back, or actual running back.
They might go out
probably named ETN. I think that's what's going to happen. So the deadline's what? 1 week from today, right?
Something like that, yeah.
And I think that's what's going to go down.
I mean, they might also try to go out and get Charbonnet. Charbonnet's value would go to the moon if that's the case. They might try to get one of the Denver running backs. That will improve that situation. Maybe they add some more flame to the fire, go out and get Justice Hill. He's been playing pretty well lately. Maybe they go after Vikings and go get Ty Chandler. Maybe they make a splash play with ETN. Maybe they clean up Cincinnati a little bit more and they go after Zach Moss, or that could be an option as well. Just
on that
keeping
note,
that.
we're going to be live during the deadline next week. So, Steve, I would wait until Wednesday of next week and reconsider that angle. They're both low end guys, but Dowdle could be completely useless.
So my friend offered me Kenneth Walker for Swift and Tank Bigsby. Is this a trade fair? It's a fair trade, but I think right now that I'd rather have Swift and Bigsby.
Me too.
I love Ken Walker. Don't like I said, don't get
you
that
sure
twisted.
do.
Do think Ken Walker's a fantastic player, a brilliant running back, but we've seen Seattle struggle at times, and that's going to happen. And with that being said, I'm a guy that owns Ken Walker, right? And if I was able to move Ken Walker for Swift and Bigsby, I own Bigsby as well. But if that trade were given to me, I would be like, because Swift has been performing well, and we were down on Swift earlier in the season, but he's come up, and he's an important part of the team, more important than we thought he was going to be in the preseason. So I'm willing to stick pat on Swift and Bigsby, and maybe move into something else. If you do like Ken Walker, it's a fair trade if you wanted to do it. Blue Jays. Would you offer DJ Moore and Reed for any of the following? Lamb, Hill, London, DK, Chase. Yes, no, yes.
So the no was London. The rest of them he's cutting the check for.
Now, would I be able to trade DJ Moore and Reed for the following? No, yes, no.
So he thinks the only two trades you're going to get through are Hill or DK that are worth doing.
And the only reason why, Blue Jays, and we've talked about this a lot, DJ Moore still has name power, but man, if Caleb Williams doesn't throw the ball 25, 30, 40 times a game, DJ Moore's value is tanked. Same with Reed. Reed is going to have incredible matchups, and then he's going to have matchups that kill him. He's a slot wide receiver. He's not great against man coverage. So if a team's running man coverage a lot of the time, it's not going to be good for him. Love's injured. People know this. People see this. The Hill owner might take it because they might not be confident in Hill right now. The DK owner will definitely take that because DK is still injured right now. The Chase owner will consider it because Chase's schedule starts to get harder. But ultimately, I don't know. And the CD owner, after you would have been able to do this last week, but I don't think you'd be able to do it this week. And London, I think London, you can move Reed straight into London without DJ Moore, personally speaking. But that's just a viewpoint that I have there. Scorpio, should I trade Megan Fox for Margot Robbie? Full PPR. As it goes, I'm a married man. I'm a married man. Joe's a married man too. So Scorpio, when it falls on this, Megan Fox has a look about her that just screams to me like, and it's not for me. Margot Robbie though, yeah, I would trade Megan Fox into Margot Robbie, and I think it'd be an easy sell. I would hit the smash button right now, Scorpio. Ricky, I want to pick up Downs. Who do I drop? Mason, Dowdle, or Tank? It's reasonable to think that Dowdle would be the drop this week.
Yeah.
He has a role when healthy in this offense, but again, like Joe said, it's uncertain. So, Mason with the injury, yeah, his is uncertain as well, but at least he's playing on a team that's capable of moving the ball down the field a lot without the fourth quarter heroics. So yeah, I dropped Dowdle for Downs right now. Steve, you're welcome. Other Steve or Steve. Quick hit here. Who's most likely to be traded to Dallas? I have Juju. Who could I offer for someone like ETN? ETN.
I think the first part of that, I believe ETN's the most likely to get moved.
Yeah, his value.
Team that's out of it has a back, and they're clearly going Bigsby in their future.
Yeah. If I'm going out there and getting Bigsby, or if I'm going out there and getting ETN right now, I'm assuming that he's going on to Dallas. I think it's fair to offer a combination of your Zach Mosses with your Jujus, giving a little bit of volume to the person because they've held on to him for so long, giving him starters right now. ETN's probably a guy that I would include in a package if I was, say I was trading a guy like Devontae Adams. I'd ask for ETN and some other pieces back. I think that ETN's a hard person because everybody knows that he's probably going to be traded and moving into a different situation, and he's a talented running back. But will he be successful in Dallas? The pathway is true that could happen, but the jury's still out. So I would trade guys like Juju, Rome Odunze, D-Hop to a degree, combinations of those guys. Wan'Dale Robinson, I'd probably try to trade into an ETN right now if I could. Darius Slayton's of the world probably unite over onto the ETN side as well. That's the kind of player value that I'd probably move as a speculative play into an ETN. I wouldn't give up like an all-time starter or something like that for it.
And the other thing you gotta realize, Dallas might not want to move anything. Dallas just might ride this out. That seems very anti-Jerry Jones, which is why I think they will trade it. I just don't think they should. I just think they will.
Yeah, and Steve, we got you on that. We'll revisit your team after we revisit the deep dives and finish up some of these quick hits here. Which one would you get off the waiver wires for Wilson, Stafford, Winston, Flacco? The way I would order it would be Stafford, Flacco, Winston, Wilson.
I'd have Wilson second. I'd go Stafford, Wilson, Flacco, Winston. But still, it's Stafford first.
Yeah, Stafford first for us. I'm aiming him for my team as well. Would you, Joe? Trying to click on this one. Why won't it click?
I haven't clicked anything, dude. This is all you messing with yourself.
Would you drop Wilson for Winston, Flacco, or Stafford all on the waiver wire? I'd drop Wilson for Stafford. That's what I would do. Steve, thank you so much. Scorpio, you're welcome. Hope that trade happens for you. Hope that trade happens for you.
I can't be on Team Barbie.
I get it, man, but I'm thinking of Margot Robbie from Birds of Prey, not Margot Robbie from Barbie. So it's different situations, different strokes for different folks. You know what I'm saying? Rumpel, I know it's early in the week, but who should I start at wide receiver 2? Still no trades I've been able to make. Pickens is on bye, so I'm stuck with either Wan'Dale, Tolbert, Kirk. Well, Kirk is out. So, we're not stuck with Kirk.
Well, Kirk's out.
Juju, his health is questionable. So I think that the lean has to be Wan'Dale. I think that the lean would have to be
but if Juju plays, he's the answer.
But if Juju plays, that I think realistically that I would want a piece of Juju. When it comes to, sorry about that. Let's go to the next quick hit, and I'll revisit this question for you, Rumpel, because I'm looking something up right now.
So with ETN on waivers, would you do Shakir for ETN? You have to have depth at your receiver to be willing to do that. ETN's a stash at this point.
You pick one. It's not.
Yeah, I take ETN as a stash.
It's not Shakir for ETN. It's Shakir or ETN.
Yeah, I take ETN.
Yeah. I do like Shakir, but you're shooting for the moon with a guy like ETN.
Yeah, because his situation could be incredible.
This right here, boys. This right here. Take that to note. This right here is something that needs to be considered. And Rumpel, as it goes for Wan'Dale, again, being in the slot, there are definitely things that he can do well, but the value that he was getting a little bit earlier in the year with the volume isn't there now because Slayton is taking some of that volume.
He sure is.
So as a Wan'Dale owner myself, ideally I would want to try to move Wan'Dale to a guy that needs a wide receiver or a flex or a potential flex play. With Slayton there and playing well, his floor is lower. Instead of a 10-point floor that he had a couple weeks back, we're looking at like a 5-point floor. The matchup this week isn't good. So hopefully against all hopes, Juju is healthy and you can play Juju. Stafford is the league winner, boys. I do agree that Stafford is a quarterback that can.
I don't know if he's a league winner, but he's certainly going to give you value moving forward.
He can take you to the playoffs. Would you trade Neighbors and Shakir for Mixon?
Yes.
J. Phil, this is a bold play, but I would. I know Mixon's schedule does get harder, but what I will say is, even with a hard schedule, the insane usage and volume that he's getting, this is the Mixon that we knew from Cincinnati. A volume hog.
2 years ago in Cincinnati.
Given the opportunity, right? Joe Mixon's finished in like the top 10 of running backs for the past 2 years. But when you look at Mixon
and that team imploded when he didn't play.
Right. And you look at Mixon, and Mixon's not a guy early in the season that we were like really high on because we had other guys that we liked better in the same scenario.
And we were 100% right on King Henry.
We wish we would have gotten a little bit more of Mixon, but the usage is really good, right? Out of all the snaps, he's gotten 207 out of 325 snaps on the field. And while on paper you're like, okay, well maybe that's not the best number that you could possibly have, it's good for Joe Mixon. And the reason why is that Joe Mixon has dealt with health things in the past, and they're giving him the high value plays. And that's where we wanted Joe Mixon at. And that's where Joe Mixon is valuable at. So he's 34th in terms of snaps played, but also he hasn't played the most snaps out of any running back. He's also had out of rushing attempts this year, Joe. I'm just pulling up the stats for you. Anybody looking to get into Mixon right now, he's only had 17, or he's the 17th ranked running back in terms of attempts, right? And that's 17th, and he's already putting up 25.
That's also because he was hurt, though. He would have had a chance to push for a top 5 running back. Mixon's definitely the dude moving forward. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
I'm all aboard the Mixon train, guys. To add to my quick hit here, there's Coleman, Tillman, and Jacoby Myers. They're all on waivers if you think these are better options.
I love Myers. I love Myers' situation.
Rumpel, what I would do right now is I would drop Kirk, I'd drop Tolbert, and I'd drop Wandale, and I'd pick up all 3. This is coming from a Wandale stand. But all 3 of those guys give you better options than Tolbert, Kirk, and Wandale moving forward, I think. Right now, from what we've seen. Now, my opinion has changed since a couple weeks ago because Wandale was getting that incredible usage. Tolbert had the potential to really blow out.
And he didn't.
Has blown out. These things have changed. If I have all 3 of these guys on my waivers right now, I'm dropping all 3 of the guys that I mentioned, Wandale, Tolbert, and Kirk, and picking up all 3 of these guys. In the order, I'm going after Keon Coleman first, Tillman, then Myers. So if I could only choose one, I'd go after Coleman, and I'd drop Kirk because he's hurt and he's out for the season. KJ, we're going to clear up the quick hits and then get to the deep dive, Joe. If Khalil Herbert is traded to the Cowboys, that's another candidate that could be traded. Would he step in as their starter, or would it be a gross committee? KJ, I think it'd be grosser than the grossest thing that you've probably seen in football this year. He
would ultimately take that gig.
He's the type of player that could take a gig when given the opportunities. He's been given plenty of opportunities, and he is a hammer type of running back.
The question is, would they let him take Zeke's job?
Yeah.
That's why I'm leaning more towards an ETN type.
I think that he's a very speculative. If he's on waivers right now, nobody has their eye on him, but he could be the guy that's moved at the deadline that ends up being the guy that ends up throwing a lot of wrenches into a lot of people's teams.
And he is sitting on my best buy teams or my best ball teams. It's like my last
Lucas,
pick in so many leagues.
12-man PPR, have QBs, Love, running backs Henry Kamara, Amon-Ra Collins, McLaurin, love that. And Njoku McBride, what are some players I should try and trade for away for a championship run? Again,
I'm moving Kamara, and if you have you didn't show your whole bench here. I'm moving Kamara and a piece for Saquon or Gibbs. That's what I want to do to your team when it's all said and done here. I love your receiving room. Njoku McBride, I love where this team is at. Kamara is your biggest vulnerability in the playoffs. Vulnerable because of his age, and will he actually play in the playoffs?
I agree with Joe, and I'm also looking at Bijan Robinson. moving on.
There's gonna be a big piece in Kamara to get Bijan.
One of those players, I get it, but you have 2 tight ends. You can play the value of Njoku up, play the schedule of Kamara going forward, and you could probably talk to a guy that's starving at tight end and move into Saquon or into Bijan.
That's not the craziest thing that's been said on these airs.
People don't really like I believe Saquon's schedule. They don't really like the Eagles' schedule in the playoffs. But Saquon's a talent, man. And I'm okay moving off of Kamara. Off the Wall Cleaning Services LLC. Full PPR. QB, Allen, running back Taylor Connor, Chase Cup, Fergie, Flex. I have Neighbors, McLaurin, Chase, Brown, Deontay Johnson, Hopkins. I think answered your question there. I think it's reasonable off that McLaurin would be a nice flex play this week. Let me look up a couple things. Let me look up a couple things first. Neighbors, again, always an option. Deontay Johnson and Hopkins don't even sniff where McLaurin and Neighbors are for me right now.
No, they're in their own world. Neighbors is not going to be. Unless I'm mistaken here, he's not going to be playing anything that's any good on the Washington's defense. What did he do the first time when he played Washington? Didn't he have his big blowout game against them?
Let me look, just to be certain here. My computer's really slow, guys, so just bear with me. And we're using a school computer, so.
Well, it's got spider webs in
it. Yeah, right. Okay, Neighbors has a plus matchup this week. So with the talent level that Neighbors has, he has a plus matchup this week against Washington. And when we look at McLaurin's matchup this week, he also has a good matchup. But yeah, Neighbors would be a reasonable play this week over McLaurin. It's close. It's really, really close, Joe. But Neighbors is definitely.
And Colin, I appreciate your insight there of going with the better quarterback. I like that. But that was the game last time where Washington didn't score a touchdown. So I'm not saying that's going to happen again.
I'm not.
But also, I want to put this out. If it ends up being Mariota, I think the Giants do have a better quarterback.
When you look at this, the last time they played Washington, he went 10 for 127 and a touchdown. This feels like they're going to over-adjust like Drake London got over-adjusted. So just keep that in mind. It feels like they will over-adjust to Neighbors, and this will probably be a nice game for
Yeah, but the thing is, Washington doesn't have a good defense to be able to over-adjust.
True. Should I drop the Jets defense for the Bengals defense or keep the Jets versus Houston on a short week? Guys,
you don't want to play the Jets this week. If you don't have the extra roster spot to do it, the Bengals are playing who? Vegas. Yeah, that's always a good start. I'm not going to say no to it.
While they're not a better defense skill position wise, it's a better situation.
It's a better situation. And half of fantasy football is the situation.
Yeah. No problem, Steve. We got you. We'll get to the deep dives are coming up. You're next on the deep dives. Gabriel from earlier. Nick, Steve, you're all on the deep dives. Dom, remember, we get to all questions, so we're clearing through these quick hits, getting to the deep dives. Steve, here's a good question and something a bit different. My league is starting a dynasty league next year, 12 team. Who goes in the first round? Bob goes first, then Joe, then Bob, etc. until 12 picks.
So who's the first round of next year's dynasty leagues? All right, Bob, you're up. You gave you the first pick.
QBs tend to go a bit early. So let me look this.
That's not a super flex, is it? Well, assume it's not a super flex.
Yeah, but
if it's a super flex, we're going to say 8 quarterbacks. So assume not a super flex.
QBs tend to go pretty early. I think, realistically speaking, while Cam Ward will be probably up there, people are going to be gaga for Travis Hunter in this draft.
No, Bob, I don't think he's sort of a fresh one. So with the current players today from fresh, not just the rookies coming in.
Okay. fresh. I think my first pick, and I know it's probably a weird one, but I'm probably on Gibbs. The situation is really
That's nothing wrong with that. I will go Bijan. You're up for the third pick.
In terms of the players this year or any
Just
time,
next year's dynasty. Who's going to finish strong enough to justify it?
I think CD Lamb has great.
And I would
value.
go J Jet. Next.
That's nice. All right. I think where I'm at, the next guy up on my list. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I think that it's reasonable to say that a quarterback goes at some point in the first round. I'll go Jane Daniels.
That's a very good one. I'd probably go Collins next.
Nico's a good pick. You're probably going to get people spicing it up for a tight end in a dynasty league. You couldn't go wrong with Brock Bowers.
And I'd go Brees.
I think you also then probably are going to get Jamar still in there.
Yeah, he's due. No, then I'm going to Ma.
That's fair. I don't think we could forget about other quarterbacks. So either Allen or Jackson probably goes.
And which tight end did you take before?
Brock Bowers.
You took Bowers.
Yeah.
Harrison Jr. would be my next one.
I think that's fair. I think that's 12, right?
I think it's about 12. And I think I went out of my 6 picks. I think I went 4 running backs.
Sorry,
that was an interesting question.
Yeah. So like that's the thing. Neighbors is a great play. Don't get that twisted at all. But there could be an over adjustment to Neighbors this week. So just keep that in mind. McLaurin is a good enough play. He's a stable-ish play. But just so you're aware, in terms of how he faces man, he does get a couple less points against man than he would in any other coverage. He's much better against zone, which they run a decent amount of time as well. So just keep that in mind when it comes to McLaurin. I think McLaurin is a good play this week, and they might over adjust to Neighbors, which will leave Slayton in the framework there. Do I trade Achane for Tyreek Hill, Jonathan? I think I'm keeping Achane. I think that he has a little bit more value than Hill right now moving forward, especially as it goes for running back markets. It's always nice to have a great running back. Exactly. Neighbors and McLaurin are close. Steve, 2 quarterback or super flex? I don't know yet. Sorry for the spam. No, absolutely.
That's all good. See, that was an interesting question. We did it,
Steve,
with neither. But if the difference is if you do super flex or 2 quarterback, you're gonna have 8 quarterback. You're in the first round, and then that just doesn't become fun radio.
You're going to see Josh Allen or Jane Daniels go number 1 overall in the Dynasty Superflex.
Absolutely.
Unequivocally. Trade Brian Robinson for Neighbors. If you need a wide receiver, I think that's reasonable. Brian Robinson is a steady force, but again, he's been dealing with injuries. Lucas, if I could package McLaurin and Kamara for Neighbors and Brees or Gibbs, what would you think about that? I love that.
I'd rather have Gibbs.
I love that. Brees' schedule is great. Gibbs is solid because he's on a great team. So,
I just don't want to jet.
And that's fair. But, you don't really have a lot of cutting in with anybody there for the Jets. Braylon Allen is good enough. So, yeah, I'd do that. I would do McLaurin and Kamara for Neighbors and Gibbs. That would probably get accepted. People might still be high on Brees. But I'm still high on Brees, too. Trade Tyreek for Kenneth Walker? No.
I want Tyreek.
Kenneth Walker is a good running back. He's in a good situation. Tyreek is a great player. I'm on Tyreek. So, here. What is our opinion on Zay with the Johnson trade? I think it allows him to play in the slot and outside, giving him more touchdowns. Joe, while you answer this question.
So here's the thing. When you get to you also have this group. So basically this question comes down to, do you want to include Zay in a trade moving forward? So on the field schematically, I actually think this is a very poor matchup for what Baltimore tries to do. Deontay Johnson is a tight line of scrimmage, get open man beater. That's basically what Zay
Man,
is. That's what he is. That's basically what
that was
Zay
weird.
is.
That was really
And we
weird.
can't
Don't ever
get the
say that
ball to
again.
Zay unless it's play action or running around. Long story short, very inconsistent. I don't really see this working and giving significant upgrade to the Ravens offense. I don't even think it impacts Zay. The one who I think gets hurt by this is Andrews, because that's essentially the role that Andrews does. So I think Zay's essentially a push. Baltimore can't really score more touchdowns per se because the black hole of the touchdown production in Baltimore is their running game. Henry is just going to eat more and more and more because that's what King Henry does and deserves. He is the league MVP anymore.
Yeah.
So the reality is, do I want to include Zay in a piece? I feel exactly the same way this moment about Zay as I did yesterday. He's a guy that I have on my team. I got him in a lot of different places, but I don't think he's radically going to tear it up. Andrews is the one who I think suffers from this. And at the end of the day, Deontay, I don't think tangibly is going to get anything much more than what you were getting out of Bateman's production. Bateman also obviously suffers because now Bateman won't be on the field anymore.
Okay.
But I don't think Johnson's a great. He's also not a good run blocker. So I don't think Johnson is a good fit in Baltimore in the long run. I just don't.
Yeah. So where I fall on this, this definitely will hurt Bateman. Bateman, and like Joe said, probably hurt Bateman the most. But again, these players, when we look at what they're capable of doing, um, Bateman's one of those players that is one of those over the top kind of guys. So when we look at the long term longevity of Zay hasn't been with the team a long time. Does well against certain coverages, and that is an unequivocal truth when it comes to Zay and Bateman to a degree. Lamar picks and chooses his guys based upon how the defenses are playing. So when I look at Zay and when I look at Rashad Bateman, is that Zay does take snaps in the slot. Bateman does not take a lot of snaps in the slot. Andrews likely do take a lot of snaps in the slot as well. Bateman primarily takes the majority of his snaps, at least 50 more than Flowers out wide. And when you look at Deontay Johnson's stats, you say, okay, guys, how is this trade going to be affected here? Deontay Johnson takes the majority of his snaps out wide. And so, I am on the bus that Zay is going to be okay, and this hurts Bateman a little bit more. So as it goes here, I think that I am. If I have MHJ, D-Hop, Dell, Cup, Tolbert, Coleman, and Ridley, you have ammunition to get Zay if needed. I think right now you could probably move Ridley and Hop to move into Zay, and you might even be able to do Ridley to Zay depending upon your team, depending on how people view that Deontay Johnson information. This is more of a thing of, this is going to probably hurt Deontay Johnson's value in the long term. Definitely. So I'm okay moving into Zay Flowers right now. And I think it's going to be cheaper than you might think to get him right now because people are going to be scared. But I do think that I would start with Ridley, and I'd start with moving Ridley and D-Hop, or Ridley by himself, to see if I can get a conversation going. If people are scared, but Ridley and D-Hop should definitely move you into Zay, with people being scared for Zay right now.
I agree with that.
And I think that's fair. I think it's fair enough to start thinking about that. You need a deep dive on Achan for Tyreek trade. We got you on that. Jesse, I have Kraft and Dallas Goedert. Should I drop Goedert for Hawkinson? It's reasonable to think that a fully healthy Eagles offense, as we've seen in the past, will not use Goedert as much. And I own Goedert, and I am also thinking about dropping Goedert. Knowing you have
they
Kraft,
never use him when the other two receivers are healthy. They never have.
If I can have Hawk, I'm on Hawk. I'm on Hawk. Do I drop Goedert for Hawk? Yeah, I would drop Goedert for Hawk. I have Zay. Would you package him to possibly upgrade? No problem though. If I have Zay, looking at the rest of your lineup there, I think that you do have the ammunition to move from Zay if you wanted to. And where I would position myself in, because I wouldn't trade Zay this week because his value is lower. I would trade him next week. If I wanted to trade him. I don't personally want to trade him, but if I did want to trade him, I would move out of him next week. Because his value is going to be very much similar as it is this week to next week, because they're going to try to get Deontay Johnson acclimated into the game. We've seen what players do as they get acclimated into the game. Zay still runs those routes out of the slot as well. So he's running slots both out wide and in the slot more than Rashad Bateman. So ultimately, like I said, it's probably going to hurt Bateman a lot more. But when I'm looking for an upgrade right now, the matchup that he has this week is a good matchup. Now, in terms of the man coverage, he's going to probably struggle a little bit in that. But in terms of the zone coverage that Denver throws out, I think he's going to feast on that. So take that how you will. I think it would be better to trade Zay afterwards if I wanted to trade him. I wouldn't do it this week. Leo, I'm in an 8-man with 2 separate trades. Love 8-man leagues. I get London, Dobbins, Amari for Gibbs. Who would you drop? Other trade, I get Geno, Deontay Johnson, Monty Pickens, and Waddle for Jane Daniels. At running back, I have Barkley and Kenneth Walker. I have Baker at quarterback. Do I accept those? I don't.
No, you have to cut too many players.
Yeah, Leo, in an 8-man league, depending on your roster size, Joe and I are both in a home team 8-man league that we've had for probably over 8 to 10 years now. A little bit before your brother got married, I believe.
Oh no, it's like 15 years.
Yeah. Wow, 15 years. Holy crap.
Yeah, because let's put it this way: I've won it 4 times, and you've won it 4 times. Tishko's won it 4 times.
Yeah, so it's been 15 years. Wow. So when we look at this, I don't do either of those trades. That's a really massive amount of volume. But if your team is struggling, I could see a reason to do the first trade, but the second trade has no value to you.
Second trade has no value.
Don't do the second trade. I could talk myself into the first trade, but I still wouldn't do it unless I'm really, really struggling.
Because Leo, you're going against what you need to be doing this time of the year. What the people were proposing, he was doing it right. They're cutting their fat to get the one key starter. And you shouldn't be picking up fat and backup at this time of the year. Your bench becomes less and less relevant the more the year goes on because the injury rates decline harder and harder. It's just part of the game. So that being said, let's make sure we hit the rest of these quick hits here as we go before our next deep dive. Don't worry about it, bro. It's all good. Yeah, so like I said, we want to do it. Santiago, last one before we dive into our next deep dive here. 2 weeks ago, I got offered Zay plus a piece for Robinson, and I didn't take it. I wish I would have because you stuck with Wilson and Adams. Oh, dude. Yeah, you don't want Garrett. You don't want 2 Jets. I mean, you don't want any Jets. But yeah, I mean, you got to look to a way to move them around, Santiago. There's just no way around it. You're in a tough spot. It's rough. It's bad times there. You don't want to be starting 2 Jets. Gabriel, on your deep dive. Great roster. Let's get to the question. What are you targeting? Monty, B-Rob, Connor, Scary Terry. So what you're looking to get here. All right. So getting Monty into your running back situation is you might need to get 2 of those 3 running backs. Monty is certainly one worth targeting. Robinson, I like him as well. So who I want to move to make this happen is going to be Pollard for sure, because right now we're starting Jacobs and Pollard. Nothing necessarily wrong with Jacobs, but Jacobs and Monty is a much better world. So here's how I'm going about and doing this. I'm going to be going Pollard and probably Hop can get you into Monty. I think that's a decent starting point there. The other spot that if you want to upgrade for Scary Terry, you can do Garrett Wilson or Adams. You probably get either one of them straight up for Scary Terry, if that's the direction that you want to go. Brooks to me is a wild card that I'm not really relying on, but I love that you have him in your pocket. But if the 2 key things we upgrade is Scary Terry for one of the Jets receivers and Pollard becomes Monty, I think you're in a good spot to do that. And Bob, the way I recommended doing this was Pollard and Hopkins become Monty, and then one of the 2 Jets receivers becomes Scary Terry.
Yeah, I think yes, and I'd even try to do this a little bit better here for you. So, targeting Monty, I'm probably moving, like you said, Pollard and Brooks, and moving myself into Monty. I think that's fair to go out and attack that way. When it comes to James Conner, I don't really want to move into James Conner. I know the volume's there, but the injury bug is there. Scary Terry, on the other hand, here, I think also to the degree that this is true, I think if these are all on the same team, Gabriel, if you're still here, you can help us out. If all these players are on the same team, you could probably get this done a little bit easier. You could probably move Adams or Wilson, and probably Wilson and Pollard to move into Monty and Scary Terry. As I look at your team, though, down the pipeline, Tyreek and Jettis are going to be starting for you every week moving forward. So you only need one other wide receiver there. BTJ is probably going to fill that role most weeks when he's healthy. So honestly speaking, you only need to keep one of Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, D-Hop, Scary Terry. So all of these pieces are truly movable in the respect that we're thinking about it, Gabriel. So I'm in on Monty. Like Joe said, I'm trading out of Pollard, and maybe you could do Pollard,
Terry, and AJ Brown.
Yeah, you could probably even target AJ Brown, to be honest with you. You have the capital. Don't sell yourself short. I know the AJ Brown owner probably doesn't want to sell AJ Brown, but you have the draft cap, or you have the player capital to go in to AJ Brown. Yeah, they're not on the same team. Okay, so yeah, I think what Joe said is true. Moving Pollard and Brooks into Monty, giving him a little bit of volume at running back. Maybe you like
No, it was Pollard and D-Hop.
Pollard and D-Hop is fair as well. He might not like D-Hop, so I think Brooks is an equally valuable piece to include in a trade for Monty. I think that's fair. And when it comes to Scary Terry, depends on which one you want more, right, Gabriel? So if you like Monty more, try to put some pieces into the pot to get Monty. If you like Scary Terry more, focus on that trade first. I think the players that I'm moving, though, are Brooks, Jacobs, D-Hop, Wilson, Adams. I'm moving all those guys.
I'm not moving Jacobs.
No, I didn't say I'm moving Jacobs. I said I'm moving all those guys: Pollard, D-Hop, Wilson, Adams, Brooks. Those are 5 guys on your team.
I don't want to move Brooks either.
That you can move today. The reason I say that is that looking at your team, especially looking at how your team can progress this year, you've got Jacobs, Najee, Monty, Tracy already.
Yeah, it's solid.
Brooks is an almost unnecessary value there. Okay, so trade him. He has speculative high value right now, and he might end up with real good value a couple weeks from now. But where does he fit in your lineup? Are you starting him? Because if you're starting him, then you could definitely trade away Tyrone, Tracy, and Najee. If you're not going to be starting him, then you could trade him away now. Like his speculative value on Carolina might be higher than his actual value on Carolina.
And there is a decent chance that that's reality. We've seen that in the past. It's also not exactly the greatest offense in the world.
So we'll get to that question in a moment, Tyson. But they're not on the same team, Gabriel. So yeah, that's how I'd walk through this. We're going to be on tomorrow live at 3:45, starting at 3:45. We're not going to be live on Thursday because it's Halloween, trick-or-treaters and all that stuff, getting our kids ready. But when we look at this, Gabriel, we can talk more about this tomorrow. Come with a couple of packages that you're thinking about, and we can walk through a couple of those packages together. Jonathan, when we look at your question, when we looked at your question here, yeah, going out and getting Zay would have been really nice a couple of weeks ago.
I hit that one while you were away, Bob.
He had some poor performances, but man, like pretty good. Should I accept this trade? Flowers for Debo. Tyson, what side are you on?
I'd rather have Debo.
I'd rather have Debo, but I can be talked into Flowers. Both, I think, have good value. Debo has a little bit of unrestrained value because he's only dealing with Kittle and potentially the return of CMC. Flowers is dealing with Henry.
So Landon, if you need to get a player now, Tyreek for Nico is acceptable. If you can't wait, then that's what you got to do. I mean, that's life.
Yeah, Landon, I like Nico a lot moving forward, especially with Diggs not being around. However, like Joe said, if you need a guy and you need him right now, this is a lateral move. Both players are going to do well, I think, long-term in the scope of the season. If you could get Nico, so he'd be getting Nico, Joe.
I like it.
I like it. I think if you have the ability to move Tyreek and Nico, but I think you could get a little bit more for Tyreek, to be honest with you. I think you could get Nico and something else that you could then flip for something else. So,
or potentially start until Nico gets back.
Yeah, if I'm trading Tyreek right now, I'd probably be looking to get back, a comparable wide receiver one. Again, Nico has issues with the health. And maybe like, I don't know, like a Ladd or a Coleman, right?
Yeah.
And then waiting on that guy for the future. I think that's fair to do. Gabriel, thank you so much for the love. We appreciate it. And we will be on tomorrow, like we said. Nick, we're going to get to your deep dive right here. Steve, we got you too. Dom and Jonathan. So, Nick, here's my team. Lamar, Tua, Pollard, Bijan, Dobbins, St. Brown, Devonta Smith, Waddle, Dell, Olave, Reed, Ferguson, Koo. And Nick, I remember a couple of your questions up towards the top of the chat a little bit too. Your team's solid, man. It's a real solid team you have. Like we've been saying over the past several weeks, Pollard was like we were saying this week, Pollard was a guy a couple weeks ago that I was buying because he's getting volume, and he's still getting that volume. He's still returning value to you right now. But what we're playing at now that we're closer to the playoffs is that Pollard's value might take a dip with injuries and the return of Tajay Spears. Okay.
And with you having Dobbins, that's always a risk too.
Right. So you need to realistically sell a little bit of that wide receiver depth right now, because you realistically can only, if you're in a one flex league, start 4 of them. If you're in a 2 flex league, you can start
you're just going to pair up Pollard and Olave and go get a stud. I mean, stud might be an overstep, but you do Pollard and Olave and go get Cook.
Yeah, or you could move Pollard and Waddle, Pollard and Reed. I like to, Reed's a hold, but again, Olave.
I think Waddle should be a hold.
Olave just had a good game. He's going to have decent games in the future, but he's one of those players that his value really changes based upon game.
Get rid of Olave. Olave is too much of a pain in the ass.
Nick, Pollard and Olave should net you something really nice, Nick. To be honest with you, if you can do that, without hesitation, I would move Pollard and Olave, and like Joe said, I'd be looking to move into a Cook. And I also think, Nick, that you could also shoot for Achane with the capital that you have on your team. If you were to move like a Devonta Smith plus a Pollard you could start getting conversations going into Achane. I like Cooks, or I like Cook. I also like Monty moving forward. We're not going to say we don't like Monty. Monty might be, Monty's a tricky buy for some people, but he's a worthwhile buy.
Sure is.
Also, Nick, Aaron Jones is a buy. Aaron Jones continues to be a buy for me. And I think that you could probably move without blowing up your team too much, Olave into Aaron Jones, because people are going to be scared of Aaron Jones' injury, and they're going to see Olave's stat line this week, like 7 receptions for 100 yards, and they're going to like that. So you might be able to get a lot done with only one player in this deal if you're willing to move Chris Olave.
Olave's who should be moved.
That's the piece that you need to think about, and then you can keep Pollard as your depth piece. But it's not unrealistic for you to be able to move a wide receiver into a running back right now. People, like I've said before, like when we were talking earlier, are low on Aaron Jones. So that just needs to be considered. Let's get to Steve's deep dive, and then we'll get to any of the questions coming in. Dom and Jonathan, you're in our deep dive queue. We are going to be trying to wrap up by like 6:30, 6:45-ish, right, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I am now 4-4. Here's my team. Steve, it's been a wild ride. Honestly,
it's been a fun ride, though.
I've been enjoying every week you tune in. I want to know what's going on with your team. For anybody that doesn't know, Steve's in a high buy-in league.
He's playing some cash.
Steve's 4-4. That's a meaty 4-4. We've been through a lot this year.
We got this.
Allen Achane, Mason, DJ Moore, St. Brown, Njoku, Amari, Chase, Hopkins, Garendo, Ford, McMillan, Pacheco. Like that. Steve, DJ Moore is a constant screw job, it feels like. And
you got to get rid of him, Steve.
And last week, Amari Cooper was supposed to do a little bit better. We had him. We had the metrics a little bit off. It was Shakir. It was always Shakir. Which.
Yeah, Amari Cooper might be a tease.
I told Joe about that, but I'm not going to take a victory lap on that yet. But when we look at this, Steve, trade ideas advice. You're in a decently solid situation, but you need to go out there and get a home run running back right now. Chase Brown could be that home run running back right now. It's fair to say that he could be. Okay. When I look at your team, you've stood pat on Achane, which is paying dividends this week, which is really nice to see. For your team, statistically speaking, these are the guys that I'm probably moving on from that will add some beef to my lineup. Okay? Number one, I know it's terrible for me to say this because I was so high on him. Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra will return really good value for you in the meat of your lineup. Okay? And the reason being is Joe's going to tell you, DJ Moore, Amari Cooper, trade him. DJ Moore's value is so unequivocally low right now that he is almost impossible to trade.
I want to improve his receivers more than his running backs.
Well, I need a piece that's going to be stronger than Mason, right? Mason was a nice piece, but with the uncertainty in the situation, this is what I'm saying to do. Amon-Ra right now can move you into a meaty running back 2 with running back 1 value and a pretty high-end wide receiver.
Yeah, but I don't think he needs a back. I like that he has Achane and San Francisco's running backs. I'm good with starting that every week. What I need to upgrade is his receiving room. I mean, that's what needs to be.
How are you going to do it
here?
How are you going to do it, Joe?
Either Cooper needs to step up in real life, which I do not believe is going to happen, because even if he does, he's going to implode when it gets cold. So Steve, you need 2 things to happen in real life here. You need Amari Cooper to have an amazing 2 weeks in a row.
So many Steves in the chat today. So many Steves in the chat.
So many Steves. I love it.
Mr.
So many
Wumbo,
Cooks, so many Steves. I love it. But Steve, what you need to happen in real life here is you need to have Amari Cooper to give you 2 to 3 solid weeks over the next 3 weeks so you can pop him before your league's trade deadline. Hopkins stepping up and taking over a role could be good for you too. Where I really think you're going to be starting in your playoffs, though, is I believe McMillan's going to be your flex. So when it's all said and done, you're going to have one of the Niners running backs and A-Chain. I can live with that all day. Again, I don't know how many times to say it. DJ Moore is your problem. If Cooper steps up in real life and he comes valuable, and you can do him and DJ Moore, as I look at this moving forward, Chicago should be in a shootout against Arizona. So you might get lucky in that DJ Moore gives you something this week.
Let me just.
I don't think you can do a move now of any significance.
Let me crank your discussion down a little bit, because what I'm looking at here, okay, I understand the value of Amon-Ra. I'm not saying that I don't understand the value of Amon-Ra, but what I'm communicating more so is that if I can move Amon-Ra into one of these three running backs, James Cook, okay, Aaron Jones, or Josh Jacobs, one of those three running backs, and if I can get a wide receiver in the conversation of, or even go after two wide receivers, maybe you want two. If I can go after a wide receiver in the vein of Cooper Kupp or Puka
or Metcalf
I'm okay moving on from Amon-Ra.
No, I'm okay with that. That's like what the return for Amos should be. I'm just saying that overall, his running back room to me is set. I am really happy with A-Chain and the Niners in my playoff run. So I don't want to mess with what ain't broken. What's broken is his receivers and his flex. So if I can wait and have Amari step up as being a potential dude, maybe get lucky and get a big week out of Hopkins. If two of those three have a big week this week between DJ Moore, Hopkins, and Amari, you can spin those two into a Metcalf. And that's
right.
Then you look at this team with Allen, A-Chain, San Francisco running back, Metcalf, and Brown.
Yeah, and Joe,
champion.
Joe, that's an absolutely perfectly fine pathway to move.
It's a risk, though. Two of the three guys have to show up.
But what you really need this week is for one of DJ Moore or Amari Cooper to show up. And ideally, what you need is Amari Cooper to show up. Because once Amari Cooper shows value again, it's going to be on everybody's radar. We liked Amari Cooper going into Buffalo. We thought it was a good situation for a couple weeks and then flip him for some good value on the back end. But he's not returning that good value on the back end right now.
Well, this is the week to do it.
Another place to look, Steve. Another place to look. And I'm being quite honest with you. These are wide receivers that I'm looking at for your team that will make your team a little bit, safer for the future potentially. I'm looking at, and this is not a player that I was looking at a couple weeks ago, but I'm looking at Josh Downs right now. I'm always looking at Khalil Shakir right now. It's reasonable to think that Ladd McConkey can keep this up.
It is. Ladd's an upgrade over DJ Moore right now.
Keon Coleman. And I'm not scared to start Ladd over DJ Moore. And,
no.
Especially if I'm looking for that value. So, Steve, I know the buy-in's huge, and I know there's a lot on the table here. Those are kind of the players and the situations, and we can spitball it a little bit more tomorrow or a little bit more later today. But that's where I'm at right now. That is definitely where I'm at. Dom, we'll get to your deep dive in a moment. Let's clear up some of these quick hits that have come in. Ross, I traded Reed, Dobbins, and Hopkins for Amon-Ra. Honestly thought I was overpaying, but League Mate is throwing a fit saying I didn't give enough. What do y'all think? Ross, you've sat here with us for a little bit.
You paid enough for Amon there. Yeah.
Listening to Amon-Ra. You gave up a good haul for Amon-Ra. You gave up a wide receiver that has potential wide receiver one return value if Love is healthy and they're both healthy. Dobbins right now is a running back 2. He's a firm running back 2. And Hopkins is a back end additional add. I don't think you overpaid at all. But again,
I don't think you underpaid either, though. I think you nailed it.
No, I think like I was saying earlier, if I'm going out there and getting Amon-Ra, I'm looking for a running back 2, a firm running back 2, and potential, right? And I'm looking for potential. This is the type of trade that I was speaking of earlier. So if you need to, Steve, if you need to move out of Amon-Ra to collect pieces, you could collect pieces like this. Maybe you don't like Reed, maybe you don't like Hopkins, but kind of spitballing and thinking about that. Gabriel.
And Ross, to answer your question, give that clip to your league and tell them to shut up because that was a fair trade.
Yeah, it's a fair trade, Ross. I don't know. If we've had people bitch, and Steve went through this as well, bitching about, oh, that wasn't fair. That wasn't fair. Well, that's life. I mean, I offered a trade to my teammate. I offered a trade to, because I always speculate value with my league mates, and they're all like, oh, well, make me an offer, and I'm like, well, what do you want to consider? Like, give me something to build off of. And my league mate goes, were you trying to joke around with me? And I'm like, no, I was trying to get your attention. Like, if you send me a text and say, give me your best offer, well, I'm not going to give you my best offer right away. I'm not crazy. Like, if you want my best offer right away, at least entertain my conversation. Like, we can play games all you want, but like, if you actually want to get a trade done and you want to move into it, like, talk to me. Don't just say, oh, offer something. I mean, come on. Like, okay, then I'll offer you something. At least I got your attention. And I said to him, I got your attention finally, right? And he goes, well, yeah, I guess you're right. Gabriel.
That's how it goes.
I'm thinking Wilson for Monty and Pollard. Or I'm thinking Wilson for Monty and Pollard for B-Rob. Thoughts? I like that. I like that a lot. Wilson's value is very similar in that wide receiver to running back market as Montgomery. A weird situation, two split kind of situations. Monty is a higher value.
I like the way you're looking at that.
I really like that, Gabriel. I would do that. I just realized today, Ruben, that my leagues are set up so that the playoffs are week 15 through 18. So including week 18. I'm 7-1 and 5-3 and have a pretty solid shot at making the playoffs in both. Should I start prepping now by picking up players with good playoff schedules? It's my first season. Should I prepare specifically for week 18, and how do I do that? So, Ruben, this is a longer story, but ideally, this is what you want to be looking at. When you're looking at running back matchups, if you have running backs that are great pass catchers, also look at the pass catching matchups, okay? That is going to play a role in the guys like Kamara. Also, week 18, I'm willing to stash rookies, at least on your team, that might end up playing in week 18, right? So I'm willing to stash.
Ruben, the issue here is if you get players on teams that know they're making the playoffs, but they aren't going to have a bye, and that final game basically means nothing for them. Some very easy targets that are almost certainly going to be true. The Green Bay Packers. Green Bay Packers are not going to win their division, but they're going to be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're fighting for the 6th seed or the 5th seed. In all probability, it's not a big game for them in week 18. It's so as long as they're in, it doesn't matter where they go. Jacobs might be a guy that doesn't play week 18. Another team that's going to hit that list, that's going to be clearly in and might not have the bye. Both of the AFC North teams, they're going to be in the playoffs. Are they going to have then they're probably not going to have the bye, so they're saving on something. The issue with the AFC North teams, they might be playing for the division, so the home game. But the other 3 division winners in the AFC are basically set. Kansas City's winning their division. That Houston's winning theirs. And Buffalo's going to win theirs. Yeah. So with that being said, what the division winners are. If Buffalo isn't playing for a chance at home field advantage, there's a chance Cook sits, there's a chance Allen sits, and all of this stuff. So not to say you rebuild your team to try to get rid of the top best players in the league, but this is what leaning in the players that are on the we got to come back and fight hard mode look good. Like Philadelphia is not running away with it. Getting Eagles is strong. Getting Cowboys are strong as long as they don't implode like the Jets are.
I think getting Vikings
Dolphins could be strong.
Getting Vikings is probably a good idea. I think,
but like I said, that's what you want to look at. Investing in the Vikings because they're not going to run away with that division.
And also, Ruben, what I'm also looking at specifically for week 17 and 18 are guys, low-end guys like Tillman, okay? Plays the Dolphins and Ravens. He's not going to be sitting. They're going to be trotting him out there. The teams that are garbage water are probably going to look better in week 18 because like Chargers versus Raiders, that game, nobody sits. Nobody's sitting in that game. Okay.
Well, that's not true. The Chargers might, if they're guaranteed a playoff spot.
They
Right
might
now, I
sit
think they're the
Dobbins.
6th seed in the AFC.
They might sit Dobbins. I mean, they could.
But to Buck's point, the young guys aren't sitting. Johnston and Ladd aren't sitting. Maybe Herbert. That could be the problem.
Panthers, they're probably trotting out Jonathan Brooks, week 18. Rams.
All young guys are playing, yeah.
Rams, they might be sitting Kyron, so you might get your first look at Corum, week 17, week 18, something around that market. So,
but every Rams playing, because the Rams be playing to get into it. So that's the other way to look at it. Who are good
Ruben,
teams?
I'm planning how I'm planning my team if I'm you is, yes, I'm looking at the playoff picture, Ruben. I'm absolutely doing that. But also I'm not imploding my team just because the matchup right now looks good. I'm looking at the matchup. I'm being aware of the matchup. And I'm asking myself, okay, what are reasonable pieces to move? Because it's going to be a dogfight. Every week is a different
that's
week.
9 weeks from now. I mean, you're going to have
a win every week
layout
in the playoffs. So that's just something to think about. And Ruben, if you join us tomorrow, we can kind of spitball this a little bit more, and a lot of the community can join in. Tyson, I have Jamar, JSN, Mooney, and someone offered me Debo for Flowers. Should I accept it? Yeah, we're on Debo.
I would take Team Debo, yeah.
We're on Debo on that one. Wumbo, the process. In one league, I started 0-3. I'm now 4-4. Feels good. It feels vindicating. And I have a decent chance of making the playoffs.
Love you, Wumbo.
So I ended up trading Myers for Pacheco since I have picked up Hopkins, Tillman, McConkey for my wide receivers, and I have Hunt. I don't mind this. You're playing the odds. And you're playing the odds with back-end players. I'm okay with
now he has Kansas City's running game.
I'm okay with this, by the way. I love it.
And Ladd's going to be Ladd is going to be the safest number 3 you're ever going to have. You're going to love it, Wumbo. Welcome to the Ladd waters.
This is explosive, Josh. Well, I think Dell and Downs are going to be great this week, or at least good this week. Cup should be good for the future. And for everybody sitting here right now, please, please, please. I'm saying it, so it's probably going to happen that DJ Moore is going to go off. So, Steve, you can thank me later. But DJ Moore is closer to my bench than a starting roster spot.
Yeah, as he should be.
I know that sounds, crazy, but that's the way it is right now with this passing game.
Josh, what I would want to do for you here, though, is I'd want to keep Dell for DJ Moore. I'd put DJ Moore in it, keep Dell. With the way that Houston receiving room is, I'd rather have Dell than DJ, no doubt about it.
Yeah, you can add.
You probably can get it through with Downs, DJ, and Russ for Cup. You probably can do that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Josh. And knowing that he lost that, maybe you ask for McCaffrey somewhere in there. It's up to you. You can figure it out. Steve, I don't remember exactly what Steve Garza's format is. But that's there. Mr. Wumbo, the Browns are the color of poop. Absolutely.
That's right.
They are the color of poop. But we knew that Jameis Winston was just going to toss the ball around like it was backyard football. And that came to fruition. Tillman was the beneficiary. If you go back into the stream and watch any of it, I'm not big on Tillman this week. We did throw him into a couple of DFS lineups. And I wish I threw him into more, to be honest with you. I was playing the 4,000 wide receivers instead of the 5,000, 6,000 wide receivers, and I got bit in the ass. So that's crazy. Garza's league is super interesting. CMC, other guys to go after for sure. Adams, Saquon, and McMillan for Stafford and BTJ just received. So Adams and Saquon for McMillan for Stafford, BTJ.
You take Saquon. That's what you do, man.
I take Saquon.
That's a win.
Steve, I'm taking Saquon. Absolutely. I offered Cup and Swift for Nico and Kenny Walker 3. If this gets accepted, is this a win? 5-3 full PPR. I don't think it's a loss. I think
I'd rather have Collins. So
yeah, I think in a long-term scope of the season, I'd rather have Collins over Cup. but I'd rather have KW over Swift. I like all four of these players right now, so I think it's a win for you either way. Wumbo.
And Steve, yes, do this. Yes, Steve, do it. Yes.
I give Stafford, Kamara, and BTJ for Adams, Saquon, and McMillan. Yes, yes, yes. We do that. We do that. Get out of town, Steve. Get your face out of town. No. Holy
that guy
shit.
hates playing football.
Holy shit. I mean, my stance for you on Amon-Ra still doesn't change. The light gets better.
This guy, is he even in the league next year?
Hey, everybody, I'm going to say it right now. Go out and buy Khalif Raymond. Go out and do
that.
Khalif
Raymond's been on fire anyways.
Go buy, if Khalif Raymond is out on your waiver wires and you have a spot for Khalif Raymond, go get him right now. You know what?
Hell yeah, man.
Joe, you were saying Garrett Wilson to the Lions by mistake earlier in the episode.
No, there's no way the Jets are trading Garrett Wilson.
This boy right here, Jameson Williams, being just a total bozo.
He is acting like a Jet.
Total bozo. What are you? What is he doing? That doesn't even make any sense. Doesn't even make any sense. Wumbo, you just have to figure out who the people in your league are. Chances are some people are, you just can't deal with them. Exactly. A lot of them make one trade in 10 years ago and lose on it and never want to trade again. I've done that more than one time. I've lost trades and I still just do it.
You got if you don't come to the plate, you can't hit home run.
When you don't want to make it too labor intensive. And I think the league that I'm in, just as a background, we all have, pretty labor intensive or, mind intensive jobs. We come together, we're friends and stuff, but we come together for the draft. We're, outside of one member, I believe, who fell out last year because their life is, life changed. They moved and all this stuff. We all have kids now. And so it's just like, or almost all of us have kids. One person's getting married. So it's just a different situation. And so it really depends on your league to get.
Hey guys, when I said before, it's okay to take something that's easy. That's what your trade should be. Make your life easier.
That's why DJ Moore holds more value than you think he does. He has a ton of great matchups left in the year, so people see all the green matchups and think, hell yeah.
All right, so now it's just we got Wumbo who's going to be responding in and out, and we're going to constantly see you there. But by the way, Wumbo, we love you for that. We're going to do Dom's deep dive after Xenon's here.
Yeah.
So just so we get the two deep dives. The two deep dives we have left are Dom and Santiago.
So is Achane and Ingram for Saquon a trade I should try? I'd rather have Achane and Ingram.
I'd rather have Achane and Ingram.
I'd rather have Achane and Ingram. Saquon's worth it. But I'd rather have Achane and Ingram. Another trade I'm thinking of. Hold on.
My bad.
Another trade I'm thinking of is Chase and Neighbors for Jettis. Should I
would do that.
Well, I am giving away Jettis in this situation. Yeah, I think I'd like to move into Chase and Neighbors, but I do love Jettis a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather keep Jettis seen on. I'd rather keep Jettis. Bloody, we see you. We're going to get to Dom's deep dive here. And Jonathan, your deep dive is next, and that will hopefully close the deep dives. Do I start Chase Brown over Amari Cooper this week? He disappointed me bad. Dom, what we need to understand about fantasy football, disappointment can lead to more disappointment. This was me last year with Brandon Ayuk. Week 1, I didn't start Brandon Ayuk. Week 2, I started Brandon Ayuk. Week 3, didn't start Brandon Ayuk. Week 4, started Brandon Ayuk. And then I made the decision, just start Brandon Ayuk. Or
trade him.
And that is something that you need to think about because just like we said about Rachaad White and being a struggle to own, if you can move Amari Cooper, and you'll probably be able to move him after this week because he should have a decent enough game. That's kind of where the chips
Dom, here's the thing. This Buffalo game is going to be a shootout against Miami. Amari Cooper was brought in part to win shootouts. Cincinnati is playing Vegas. And, there's a chance. There's two things about that game. First off, the real chase on that team is going to make them throw the ball like crazy. So once it's over, you will get garbage time carries at the end, but you're not going to get a ton of prime opportunities. Amari Cooper is the better player. He's in the better situation. And I know you got burnt. Bob just told you his story about why you shouldn't be trying to run away from pain in fantasy football. Amari is the right start, given all the assumptions everyone says healthy, blah, blah, blah. But Amari is the right start. And I do think that in the long run, it is going to work out better for Amari this week. Again, you got another week to get implemented in the game plan, another week for Allen to get comfortable with you, and it's the shootout. So
yeah, and to
all
add,
that added up, I like it.
To add into that, I think at the very worst this week, there will probably have similar-ish stat lines, Dom. Like I said about Chase Brown, Chase Brown is kind of one of those guys that he's getting a lot of valuable carries for the Bengals. If the Bengals hold the lead in the fourth quarter, it's very likely that they give Chase Brown more opportunities to just kind of run that game out, and that he doinks his way into the end zone for a touchdown like he has done a couple of weeks now. I think it's reasonable to think that Chase Brown will get a touchdown this week against this Raiders defense.
But his ceiling is capped.
Potentially two. But his ceiling does continue to be capped by the presence of Moss and the presence of Chase. Again, when we look at the game logs for Chase Brown, he's not a player that is going to go over 100 yards all-purpose, realistically speaking.
Mm-mm.
So, it's more realistic that he goes for 40-ish yards and maybe a touchdown. That's kind of his.
And he's not the pass catching back,
right? It's kind of his ceiling there. And I'm not even worried that he's the pass catching back, because this.
No, my point is he's not. So you're not getting those catches. So you're kind of limited at max at 13 points.
But when we look at Amari Cooper, outside of Amari Cooper's drops and Amari Cooper being Amari Cooper, you have a situation where we just got busted. But you got to remember, rain, we were worried going into this week because he was running limited routes the first week. Only got targeted 2 times. When we look at Amari Cooper, and I just want to go off routes run in week 8 versus week 7, like for everything Joe said and everything that I'm communicating, Amari Cooper is the play that has a bigger chance to take you to the promised land this week. I know it's not sexy. Mm-hmm. I know it's frustrating. And I know it's just, indubitably not the ideal situation to be in. But
indubitably,
I think the lean is Amari Cooper. While we get to the next question, I'm going to pull up a couple slings, Joe, for Dom here.
It's just a fun word to bust out, Bob. I appreciate you did it. So we're going to get Santiago's deep dive, and then we're going to round out the quick hitters and this episode in the process. So we need to do a deep dive here on Tyreek for running, or A-Chain for Tyreek. The running backs he has are Mason, CMC, A-Chain, Walker, Hunt. His receivers are McLaurin, Tillman, Ladd, McMillan, and Wandale. I know you've had horrible luck. That can happen. When I look at this, getting Tyreek makes your team look like this after the fact. So if you do A-Chain for Tyreek, you end up having Scary Terry, Tyreek, and Ladd as your starters week in, week out. And your running backs become San Francisco, Walker, and Hunt. Yeah, dude, I could totally live with that. I think that's a very good trade for you to do. I think that's a good thing, as Martha Stewart would say. How about you, Bob?
Okay. So, yeah, how I fall on this is like you're sitting here, you have Achane, CMC has the potential to come back. Looking at your wide receivers, you're in a bad rope of things right now. If I were you, Santiago, the running back that I'd look to trade would be Walker. I know Walker is one of the players that we do like. He has good long-term value over the course of the season, but the ceilings for both Walker and Achane are really high. I'm not gonna go crazy on that. It's going to be high. So when you're running into this bad luck, you want a wide receiver, but I don't think Tyreek is the guy that I shoot for, Jonathan. I think I'm probably moving Walker and maybe moving into a different piece. You can start talking to a lot of guys out there, a lot of pieces. But if this is your best offer on the table, it's reasonable to think with the lineup that you have that CMC, Mason, Hunt, and Walker will carry you even if you give up Achane. So that there's two viewpoints that you can take this in, right? I want to keep Achane, Jonathan, and I'd rather move Walker than Achane. But if you wanted to get this deal done today and this deal is on the table, it's reasonable to think that this deal does make your team a little bit better, especially seeing what Wandale has put out there the past couple of weeks. Right, Joe?
That's right. Like I said, I'm 100% on this trade, Santiago. That's where I'd be at with there, Bob. So why don't you bring home the final answer here?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely scrambling, looking for film.
We got a couple of deep dives left,
but I think Amari Cooper still can produce. Yeah, absolutely. So Bloody right here. Do you think I should trade Achane, Brian Thomas, Tony Pollard, and Michael Pittman for Bijan, Josh Downs, Chris Olave? I think there's a lot of pieces you're moving in that, and I get volume is king. But one of the things to think about here is Bijan is a great asset to own. Achane is a great asset to own. I do like Josh Downs moving forward with Flacco. Chris Olave, I could fall either way on. Same with Michael Pittman. Same with Tony Pollard. Bloody, for me, where this stands is I'm looking at the side that has the running back that I think could continue to produce in the future and the wide receiver that I think is going to help me out more. So if you need a bunch of pieces, which you shouldn't really be searching for so much right now, but if you need a bunch of pieces and your lineup is a little bit, less girthy, just talking about the wide receiver room that we just saw from Jonathan, this is the type of trade that could build you into something if you want to trim the fat. But I think there's other ways to do this, like Achane and Brian Thomas Jr. for Bijan. Just do that.
Yeah.
You can just do that, right? Like moving a Colts wide receiver to move into another Colts wide receiver, that seems crazy to me, right? I think both will have value with Flacco, and I like Downs a little bit more than Pittman. And then the Tony Pollard for Chris Olave, I get, moving Tony Pollard.
I would do that trade though, even though it's a little bulky. I'd do it.
Yeah, it's fair enough that I would like to have Bijan. So in this instance, I just said I wouldn't trade Achane. But in this instance, it makes sense. And for Jonathan as well, your team, it makes sense to trade him because you have some depth there at running back to do that. This makes your team better in the wide receiver market. For you, Bloody, this probably makes your team really good as well. So take those all into consideration. Coming down here, Xenon, having Kittle, Kelsey, and Ingram, so Achane or Swift plus Ingram for Saquon. Could this work? Yeah, I mean, it could. I would do knowing that you have Kittle and Kelsey, Ingram is a piece that you can move on from. Achane and Ingram at least gets the conversation going for Saquon. They might ask for Swift back, and if that's the case, I'd do that. Dom, love that you came back just in time. Xenon, right now, Cooper Kupp versus Amon versus Hill. Well, it's reasonable to think that Amon's going to have a good game this week. But also just keep in mind, the passing game has been fluctuating, but they haven't really passed more than 25 times a game. My lean right now on Tuesday, Xenon, is Kupp. But I'll have to look
my lean's Tyreek. I want to be in that shootout.
I'd have to look into it a little bit more. For anybody wondering about Amari Cooper ran 23 routes last week. 23 routes. So that's not enough. It's not a blessing. Josh,
but again, he's still getting integrated into the system. I do think he's going to bounce back.
Josh, love this. Traded Dell Mostert for James Cook. That's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing. He got Amari Cooper got less routes this week. He got only 35 total routes the past 2 weeks. Trading Dell and Mostert, while we do like Dell this week and while we do like Mostert this week, trading him into James Cook is a celebration. Looking at your team now,
that's before the trade.
Looking at your team, it will be Achane and Cook. I love that, man. Just do it. Sometimes injuries are the best thing that can happen to you. Make you benching Ayuk is easier to do. Yeah, just like Rachaad White had to lose all the receivers, and now he's paying off. And the Colts are benching Richardson, so Pittman paid off. Mr. Wumbo, I gave you a shout-out earlier in the episode. If you want to backtrack and listen for that shout-out, please do, because I shouted you out with, like you mentioned, failing into success. If you held on to Michael Pittman Jr., and we were talking about you before you came in, if you held on to Michael Pittman Jr., you're going to be paying dividends. And it was something that I mentioned the other day, is that Anthony Richardson was going to get benched. It came true. And, you just couldn't keep rolling out him. 0-5, I mean, the master plan takes place.
That's right.
And here's the thing, Wumbo, you probably had a good look on some of these guys in the offseason. Now, with the situations cleared up, the things that were limiting these guys are now not limiting these guys anymore. So now they're a better play.
And now you're 3-5, Wumbo. Love it.
And Steve, we'll get to your DD. We'll add to this DD to the stream tomorrow, because we're cutting off the DDs prior to that.
We're cutting it all off.
Watch on Amari Cooper game and skim through the audio spikes of the crowd cheering or booing and hit play. It's probably Amari Cooper dropping a pass. Wumbo, that's Amari Cooper's life, man. That is Amari Cooper's life.
Cleveland was hard.
Wumbo, he's in an 8-team league, so his lineup is going to be crazy good. Traded quite a lot when they were injured or buy low. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Thinking of going for CD and Saquon. Any others I should go for? I think my main target right now is CD, and my other target is Breece. I think those are the two guys that definitely have good enough schedules on paper right now. And they have
where the hell are you going to play them?
And the talent to do that.
So he's just going to have all of them so no one else does?
No, near the start or later on. I think it was like nearish to the 2 hour mark. I think it was nearest to the 2 hour mark. We gave that shout. I'm not quite sure. But it was when we were deep talking about Michael Pittman. So check the
But nonetheless, Bob, copy down Steve's question. We'll leave it as the final thing on screen so we have it for tomorrow. It was great being with you guys. We will be with you guys again tomorrow. Steve, if you want to copy and paste it, I just put up the link for tomorrow so you guys can put all your questions in there now.
And I love that you've traded for a lot of stuff, Xenon. I absolutely love that for your team. But we'll be with you tomorrow.
So perfect, guys. We will see you all again tomorrow.
3:45 until about 5:30 tomorrow.